Chapter 353. Chu Mang and Fan Lu couldn't be bothered with Mu Feng's words. Regardless of whether it was a misunderstanding or he had mistaken Mu Feng for someone else, no matter what, Mu Feng had to die. Scram! Chu Mang roared in rage at the lady in front of him. Fan Li's arrow pierced through the air, its speed as fast as lightning. Wait! At the same instant, Qin Wentian's voice drifted over. Fan Li's countenance stiffened as he saw the arrow changing direction. The arrow that was initially aimed at Mu Feng was now shot off into the distance. Fan Li turned his head to look at Qin Wentian, only to see that Qin Wentian's countenance had regained some color. His eyes couldn't help but narrow in surprise. Don't kill him yet. Qin Wentian's eyes were still tightly shut. The golden strands of light flowed through his body, dispelling the black-colored poison, healing his damaged meridians and internal organs. His countenance gradually regained some color, and upon seeing this, Bai Lu and the rest were all filled with joy. Everything was fine now. Qin Wentian was currently suppressing the poison that was invading his body. Who? Qin Wentian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Opening his eyes, he saw Qin staring at him with her clear eyes. Not only that, an expression of joy could be seen on her face, as though she was happy to see that he was safe and sound. But when Qin Wentian opened his eyes, her countenance returned to normal. She was still as cold as ever, with no fluctuations in her heart. Qin, you look very beautiful when you smile. Qin Wentian smiled at Qin. Qin's eyelashes fluttered, but she didn't say anything. After which, she turned her gaze away, not looking at Qin Wentian. With regards to this, Qin Wentian was already used to it. If Qin was able to keep smiling, that would be abnormal instead. Standing up, Qin Wentian walked towards Mu Feng, only to see an expression of shock on Mu Feng's face. How was this possible? Qin Wentian was actually able to survive after being poisoned by his blood poison? Are you certain that I'm the one who killed your clan members? Qin Wentian stared at Mu Feng, standing right in front of him and the young woman, allowing Mu Feng to examine him in detail. Mu Feng also stared at Qin Wentian, scrutinizing him from head to toe, before looking into Qin Wentian's eyes. This can't be right, how can this be? They're clearly the same person, but why are they so different in terms of aura, and figure, how can this be? Mu Feng's face was pale as he coughed out a few more mouthfuls of black blood. In the past year, other than Sangzhou City, I've only been to Jinzhou City. I've never been to any other place, let alone kill your family members. I don't even know why you tried to kill me just now. If you're not lying, then someone must be impersonating me. That Qin Wentian you know, how strong is his cultivation base? Qin Wentian also wanted to know who was the one who impersonated him and did such a despicable thing. This person was the one who truly deserved to die. I've only exchanged blows with him for a short period of time. He's extremely strong, and from the aura he exuded, his cultivation base should be the same as mine, 9th level of Yuanfu. I've always been at the 7th level of Yuanfu. Qin Wentian released his own aura. This point, regardless of my friends or enemies, they all know. Shu Wanyu, you should be able to testify for me, right? A year ago when I was still in the Moon Continent, my cultivation base was only at the 5th level of Yuanfu. Qin Wentian glanced at Shu Wanyu, causing her beautiful eyes to freeze. Initially, she wanted to settle the debt with Qin Wentian, but when she saw Mu Feng and Qin Wentian exchanging blows, she knew that Qin Wentian's strength was even higher than hers. Not only that, even Chu Mang and that fatty were already extremely powerful. At this moment, upon seeing Qin Wentian taking the initiative to look at her, Shu Wanyu's countenance turned extremely unsightly. Mu Feng, I'm afraid you've been framed by someone. Although this person isn't a good person, he wouldn't be that crazy. Back then, although he captured me, he didn't touch me at all. Also, look at the women around him, is it really necessary for him to do such a thing for your sister? Shu Wanyu spoke to Mu Feng, her words causing Qin Wentian to be stunned. This woman was actually so kind-hearted that she would speak up for him. Back then, Shu Wanyu hated him to the bones. Qin Wentian pondered for a moment before understanding. Most probably, after Shu Wanyu returned to the Moon continent, she wanted to clear her name for him because of the rumors about her being captured by him. Mu Feng glanced at Luo Huan and Bai Lu Yi, both of them were exceedingly beautiful. Although his younger sister was very beautiful, these two weren't inferior in the slightest. And when he looked at Qing, even with his mental fortitude, he couldn't help but feel his heart stirring. In that case, had he really been framed by someone? As he thought of this, Mu Feng's countenance was filled with incomparable agony. What about his enemy? He had risked his life to kill Qin Wentian, but in the end, he had killed the wrong person. Not only that, he didn't even know who his enemy was, causing him to fall into such a miserable state. His heart was filled with hatred. As he thought of this, the energy in his body finally had no way to prevent the poison from erupting forth. Instantly, his entire body was engulfed by the poison, as his entire body turned pitch black. Upon seeing this scene, the people in the surroundings all retreated, not daring to get close. They didn't expect that Mu Feng had been so heavily injured all this time, and with the poison corroding his body, he had used his entire cultivation base to seal the poison, all for the sake of killing Qin Wentian. Even if he managed to kill Qin Wentian, the poison would still act up in his body. Feng Gij. The young woman paled when she saw the changes in Mu Feng. She wanted to rush forward, but Qin Wentian waved his hands as a surge of energy enveloped her. After which, Qin Wentian stepped out, pulling her along as he spoke, "If you go forward, you will die for sure. I will go together with Feng Gij." Tears flowed unceasingly down the young woman's cheeks as she stared at Qin Wentian. "I'm really sorry for what happened earlier, I hope you can forgive me." Although Feng Gij cultivates poison arts, his character is very good, and he loves to make friends. If not, he wouldn't have been plotted against by someone back then. That incident was too much of a blow to him, and that's why he chose to cultivate a poison art that he couldn't suppress. He never intended to live, and that's why he kept chasing me away. I know he was very fierce to me, and he told me to scram because he didn't want me to die with him. Qin Wentian cast a glance at Mu Feng, who was covered in poisonous gas, as he sighed in his heart. Although Mu Feng had almost taken his life earlier, Mu Feng couldn't be blamed for this. Anyone who had encountered such a cruel situation would surely go crazy. Who was the one who was so cruel to frame him? Not only that, the culprit seemed to have known that he would be participating in the ranking battle. This was why Mu Feng was so angry that he rushed here from thousands of miles away just to kill him. If it weren't for the fact that he and Mu Feng were both on the brink of death, there wouldn't have been a chance to clarify things. If he didn't die, then Mu Feng would. The actions of the culprit could be said to be extremely vicious. "Let me help you take a look at him." Qin Wentian pulled the young woman over to Bai Lu Yi's side, while he walked towards Mu Feng. At this moment, Mu Feng's poison aura had gone out of control, but he was still clear-headed. "You cultivate poison arts, how did you end up in such a state?" Qin Wentian asked. "In a moment of desperation, I cultivated a tyrannical poison art. I had no way to digest the poison aura, and could only use my own strength to suppress it, allowing it to fuse with my blood." Mu Feng's voice was weak as he stared at Qin Wentian. "I almost killed you, and I don't beg for forgiveness. I only regret that I wasn't able to kill my true enemy with my own hands. If you manage to find him in the future, you must definitely kill him. Also, little Min, she has a kind heart, I hope you won't make things difficult for her. I have a set of acupuncture techniques that can stimulate one's potential, allowing every part of your body to be in a state of activity. However, it's also extremely dangerous, and the slightest mistake could result in death. Do you want to give it a try?" Qin Wentian asked Mu Feng. Mu Feng stared at Qin Wentian. At this moment, if Qin Wentian wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping his palms. Life and death are decreed by fate. Since I'm about to die, why wouldn't I dare to give it a try? Mu Feng spoke in a low voice. Qin Wentian nodded his head lightly and squatted down beside Mu Feng. He retrieved a silver needle and pierced it into the center of Mu Feng's brows, the back of his ears, his forehead, his chest, his arms. Very swiftly, Mu Feng's body began to tremble as an expression of extreme agony appeared on his face. "You're right, life and death are decreed by fate. However, the possibility of death is much higher. If you want revenge, it's best if you live on." Qin Wendian spoke as though he was speaking of something extremely ordinary. This set of acupuncture techniques was taught to him by Uncle Black, and was named the extremity acupuncture technique. It could stimulate one's potential, allowing the organs and blood to be in a state of activity. However, if one couldn't withstand it, there was a possibility that one's body would explode and die. Not only that, after the acupuncture was applied, the target would be in a state of extreme weakness. Such an acupuncture technique was extremely dangerous, but Mu Feng was already on the verge of death from the backlash of the poison aura. The energy in his body couldn't withstand it, and he could only use poison to fight poison. After the acupuncture treatment was completed, Qin Wendian retreated, only to see Mu Feng's body trembling violently. The astral energy from the needles seeped into Mu Feng's body, causing the needles to emit a faint astral glow. Feng Gij. The girl Bai Lu Yi was holding on to wanted to rush up to Mu Feng, but how could Bai Lu Yi let go? Many spectators watched from afar, witnessing this crazy scene. At this moment, it was as though Mu Feng had truly gone mad. He let out a series of low growls as his body was surrounded by a terrifying poison mist. In fact, Mu Feng's countenance had turned extremely malevolent. His face contorted and his body contorted, as though he was in so much pain that he wished he were dead. Lu Min's tears flowed unceasingly, her heart ached as she stared at Mu Feng's current state. Yet Mu Feng still persisted, no matter how much pain he felt. Although he screamed unceasingly, Mu Feng's eyes were still filled with determination. He couldn't die, he had to live on and find his enemy. The disciple of the Poison Monarch, the number 7 ranker on the Heavenly Fate rankings, Mu Feng, is actually in such a miserable state, on the verge of death. If he dies, there would undoubtedly be one less terrifying character in the ranking battle. This would be beneficial to those at the top of the Heavenly Fate rankings. There were some who wished for Mu Feng's death. If he died, they wouldn't have to face him. The disciple of the Poison Monarch was definitely one of the people they didn't want to face. Roar! Finally, Mu Feng let out an earth-shattering roar as the poison aura around him frenziedly gushed into his body, disappearing completely. Mu Feng's head tilted to the side as he finally stopped struggling. Dead? The countenances of the spectators froze. Mu Feng died just like that. Qin Wendian walked forwards as his countenance flickered. Mu Feng's breathing was still present, he was still alive. Qin Wendian squatted down and stretched out his hands, placing them on Mu Feng's palms. But an instant later, he retracted his palms as wisps of black qi circulated around them. Qin Wendian's heart trembled, the poison aura in Mu Feng's body was even more terrifying than before. At this moment, Mu Feng's eyes opened as he stared at Qin Wendian. His gaze was as cold as ever, exuding an aura of coldness. Mu Feng's body struggled slightly, but to his surprise, Mu Feng actually managed to stand up. His eyes swept over the people in the surroundings before casting a deep glance at Qin Wendian. After which, he turned around and left the area. Feng Gij. Lu Min dashed forward, supporting Mu Feng's body. Qin Wendian saw that the poison aura from Mu Feng's body didn't corrode Lu Min's body. This scene caused an expression of astonishment to appear on Qin Wendian's face. Seems like the method of using poison to counter poison had worked. Not only that, Mu Feng wasn't in a weakened state, he could even walk on his own. The reason why he could survive this ordeal was naturally because Mu Feng had an incomparably resolute heart. He couldn't die. That silhouette gradually faded away as the crowd dispersed. At this moment, they didn't know that in the future, this weak-looking young man would become an existence like the Poison Monarch. In fact, he was even more terrifying than the Poison Monarch. Chapter 354. Qin Wendian stared at Mu Feng as he left. Mu Feng's personality had undergone a drastic change after suffering such an unexpected calamity. However, Mu Feng's heart grew more and more resolute. That terrifying poison qi actually failed to kill him, and instead, under the dual stimulation of the poison qi, he managed to survive. His desire for vengeance was so strong that it was terrifying. Shifting his gaze, Qin Wendian turned to Shu Wanyu as he smiled, dumped by Yang Fan. Shu Wanyu frowned when she heard this. She stared at Qin Wendian as she gritted her teeth. I was the one who suggested a breakup. Qin Wendian smiled lightly, it seemed like his guess was right. The major powers placed great importance on their reputations. Although he didn't do anything to Shu Wanyu, and Shu Wanyu was still innocent, it was true that he had abducted her for a period of time. It was inevitable that he would be criticized by others, and because of this, a rift was formed between them, which eventually led to their breakup. Back then, it was you who wanted to kill me, that's why I captured you. This matter ends here. If you continue to pester me, I won't let you off so easily. Qin Wendian faintly spoke. Beside him, Fan Le had a despicable smile on his face as he stared at Shu Wanyu. Be careful that I don't want you to warm my bed. Shu Wanyu bit her lips as she stared fixedly at Qin Wendian. After a moment of silence, she unwillingly turned and left. Qin Wendian didn't care about Shu Wanyu. He slowly walked forward, arriving at the entrance of Grand Xia, directly facing the ancient royal palace. In front of him, there were 99 azure dragon jadestone steps on the ancient pathway, exuding an incomparably majestic aura. At the top of the steps, there were 9 gigantic drums. Only those who were qualified to pay their respects to the ancient kingdom would have to fight for the heavenly fate. However, on both sides of the azure dragon jadestone staircase, there were paths that branched off into the sky, parallel to the ancient path. This was the ancient path that only the members of the 36 Overlord-level forces had the qualifications to ascend. As for the other path, one could only proceed in a straight line, and one had to look up into the sky. It was rumored that these two pathways, the heavenly path, were once prepared for the royal clans of Grand Xia to inspect the troops of Grand Xia. Today, when the young geniuses were competing for the heaven's will, these two paths were the spectator paths. Ascending the stairs, sounding the drums, making pilgrimages, contending for the mandate of heaven, how many outstanding figures had emerged, and how many heroes had fallen. This path was exceedingly cruel. Eventually, only 360 people would be able to contend for the position of heavenly fate, becoming the heavenly fate rankings. Out of the 360 rankers on the heavenly fate rankings, only 36 of them could be considered geniuses of Grand Xia. How many heroes would fall on this path? Qin Wendian stood there, looking at the ancient road ahead. Grand Xia was vast and there were many heroes within. All of them came here for the mandate of heaven. Every one of them had struggled for many years and had countless experiences and stories. They all dreamed of becoming famous in Grand Xia and looking down on the world. He didn't know what kind of powerful opponent he would face, nor did he know what kind of danger he would encounter, but he knew that his will would not die, and his original heart would not change. He needed this battle to become one of the top 3 rankers on the heavenly fate rankings. Only by controlling the White Deer Institute would he be able to establish a foothold in Grand Xia. He needed this battle to defeat Zhang Chen. Only then would he have the qualifications to be together with Qingcheng. He needed this battle to let the people of Grand Xia know who he was. Closing his eyes, Qin Wendian entered a meditative state, forgetting everything. A light breeze brushed past his ears, as the sounds of the boundless universe drifted into his ears. In a certain space, an old man stared at the young man beside him as he spoke, "Son, your talent is outstanding and you've cultivated for many years. This battle will be the time for you to make a name for yourself." In another space, a young man smiled at his family, "Father, Mother, Grandpa, don't worry. I will definitely do my best." There was also a young girl who stared at her elder brother. She raised her fist and pouted, "Brother, you have to do your best. This time around, there might be many beauties who will fall in love with you. At that time, you can marry a sister-in-law for me." The advice of elders, the advice of friends, and the heroic words of the young man, all gathered together. They were all ordinary people, yet they were all extraordinary. But this time around, many of them would be eliminated, and some would fall. This was the baptism of fate. Since they wanted to fight, they had to face the cruelty of fate. Fan Le walked up, staring at Qin Wentian as though he wanted to call out to him. Yet Luo Huan waved her hands, blocking him. Chu Mang sat down beside Qin Wentian, quietly sitting on the ground. Luo Huan smiled, contemplating the face before her. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, she would always be proud of this junior brother of hers. This wasn't the Junlin banquet, and this place wasn't Chu. This time around, Qin Wentian would be facing off against the heroes of Grand Xia. Qing Er also stared at Qin Wentian as a strange light flashed in her eyes, as though she was thinking of something. After which, she turned and slowly walked away. The Bailu siblings stared at the 99 steps ahead, their hearts filled with boundless anticipation and yearning. More and more people gathered here, but the crowd didn't leave. They were all waiting for the start of the ranking battle. Countless scenes flashed through Qin Wentian's mind. It felt like an instant, yet it also felt like an eternity. These 3 days were like a dream. A dream passed. When Qin Wentian opened his eyes, he felt a sense of wonder. These 3 days passed too quickly. He faintly felt as though he wanted to grab hold of something, yet he couldn't. This feeling was too marvelous. The entire space seemed to be filled with the sound of tsunamis. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared upwards, only to see many silhouettes walking towards the ancient pathway in the air, arriving at the end of the flight of stairs leading to the pathway. Among these people, Qin Wentian saw some familiar faces. For example, Luo He from the Pil Emperor Hall, and the experts from the Ouyang aristocrat clan. Qin Wentian knew that these people were from the 36 transcendent powers. The 9 transcendent powers standing in the middle were undoubtedly the strongest: Chen clan, Venerate Heaven's sect, Shi clan, Wang clan, Pil Emperor Hall, Hua clan, Swallow Swordsman, Ouyang aristocrat clan, and Sky Demon sect. As for the 3 in the middle, the one on the left was from the Chen clan, the one on the right was from the Shi clan, and the one in the middle was from the Venerate Heaven's sect. These 3 transcendent powers, as the hosts, could be considered half the master of the Venerate Heaven's sect. The person from the Venerate Heaven's sect was an old man, exuding a faintly discernible aura. Qin Wentian noticed that countless people had expressions of respect on their faces. Because this old man was the leader of the Venerate Heaven's sect, Old Man Tianji. Old Man Tianji was able to observe the constellations, prying into the future of Grand Xia. Under his governance, the Venerate Heaven's sect didn't like conflict, but no one dared to underestimate their strength. They were the ones who created the most authoritative rankings in Grand Xia, and the heavenly fate rankings were also determined by them. Old Man Tianji waved his hands to the countless silhouettes below, with a smile on his face. That smile seemed to have never changed even after 1,000 years, yet it still caused people to feel a sense of familiarity. At the instant Old Man Tianji waved his hands, the crowd spontaneously moved. Countless people moved to the 2 sides, as though they wanted to give up the vast space in the middle. Very swiftly, the space on both sides became more and more congested. There were even some people who had already moved ahead, while the space below the 99 steps gradually widened. But there were still many silhouettes remaining. There were young men, middle-aged men, and even old men. All of them were here for the heavenly fate rankings. Other than the sound of footsteps, there was no other sound in this space. It was as though there was a formless order in this space. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the silhouettes in the air, as well as the crowd on his left and right. Their gazes were all fixated on him. They were all thinking, who would be the one to become famous under the heavens this time around? Their gazes seemed to be searching for those who they felt were the most outstanding. And among these people, the gazes of Chen Wang, Shi Patian, and the rest were the most concentrated. It was as though their names were already destined to resound throughout Grand Xia. Junior brother, you can do it, Luo Huan walked to the side of Qin Wentian, as she gave Qin Wentian a big hug. The softness of her embrace caused one's heart to palpitate. Qin Wentian could only smile bitterly. Bai Lu Yi hugged Bai Lu Jing as well. After which, she turned to look at Qin Wentian and similarly stepped forward, giving him a hug as well. This caused Qin Wentian to feel extremely overwhelmed. The top 3 rankers of the Heavenly Fate rankings, I'm filled with anticipation, Bai Lu Yi spoke in a low voice, as she stealthily walked to the side with Luo Huan and the rest. Qin Wentian, Ouyang Guangsheng, Bai Lu Jing, Chu Mang, and Fan Lu stood together in a row, yet they didn't attract too much attention. Even for those who were acquainted with them, how could they stand a chance? Although these people had once displayed their talent in certain places, this place was the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. This time around, the ranking battle for the Heavenly Fate rankings had gathered the most outstanding Yuanfu cultivators of Grand Xia. Mo Qingcheng was a beauty whose beauty could topple empires. No matter where she went, she would always attract the attention of the crowd. At this moment, she walked to a spot not far away from Qin Wentian, with Zhang Chen following behind her. His eyes were filled with a sinister coldness as he stared in the direction of Qin Wentian. Luo He, who was far away in the air, frowned when she saw this scene. Her eyes flickered with a cold light as she stared at Qin Wentian. "Isn't that maiden so beautiful?" someone exclaimed in admiration. There were simply too many beauties participating in the Heavenly Fate rankings, yet Mo Qingcheng was able to cause the gazes of the crowd to be fixated on her with just a single glance, unable to shift away. "Who is she?" someone asked. Mo Qingcheng from the Pill Emperor Hall. Indeed, the rumors are true. No wonder even a character like Hua Taishu wants to woo her. Behind her is Zhang Chen. I heard that Zhang Chen has cultivated a fearsome cultivation art and is currently a seeded candidate. He definitely wouldn't be able to escape from the top 10 rankings, and even the top 3. He has always been wooing Mo Qingcheng, yet he was rejected. Countless people had their own thoughts. They hoped that time would pass faster, so that they would be able to witness the magnificence of the generations. Finally, other than those participating in the ranking battle, the crowd left the central region. Old man Tianji gazed downwards as he slowly spoke. A few thousand years ago, the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia was destroyed. However, the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia still continues to gather the spiritual qi of our vast Grand Xia. Hence, once every 3 years, the young elites of Grand Xia would come here to seize the ancient luck and become heavenly mandate characters. I've observed that the fate of Grand Xia has already been established. Perhaps, the destiny of heavenly mandate is already within your grasp. Today, let us see who will rise and fall under the heavens in the future. Chapter 355. Old man Tianji's voice reverberated throughout the heavens and earth, as though it contained a magical power within, causing the hearts of countless people to surge with emotions. Even those who came to spectate felt their blood boiling. The fate of Grand Xia had already been decided. Would someone with the heavens mandate be born? In the future of Grand Xia, who would rise and fall? Old man Tianji's countenance was as calm as ever as he stared at the countless silhouettes below. This time around, the number of participants was the same as before, over 10,000 people. The majority of these 10,000 people had a cultivation base at the 9th level of Yuanfu. If they didn't have enough strength, they wouldn't even bother to participate in the ranking battle. Although it seemed like a lot, in the perspective of the entire Grand Xia, 10,000 people was merely a drop of water in the ocean. Not only that, these people would continue to be eliminated. First, they had to obtain a ticket to participate in the ranking battle. At this moment, Old man Tianji spoke again. "Now, all of you can ascend the ancient pathway and sound the drums at the peak. Those who can't sound the drums 9 times, you are free to leave." Sounding the drums, there were too many people, there was a need to eliminate many. It was extremely difficult to sound the 9 gigantic drums. If one couldn't sound the drums 9 times, they wouldn't even have the qualifications to enter Grand Xia. Not only that, the drums could be struck continuously, but it was impossible to stop the sound of the drums. If the sound of the drums was interrupted, it would be useless. Over 10,000 people stepped out one after another, ascending the 99 steps. Their expressions were solemn, and not a single one of them soared into the air. They all ascended the ancient pathway, one step at a time. This was a sign of respect to the ancient pathway. Finally, the first person ascended the 99 steps, arriving in front of the gigantic drum in the middle. His long robes fluttered in the wind as a powerful aura gushed forth from him. He maintained a distance of one step away from the gigantic drum, and his entire body seemed to be clad in a layer of divine armor, exuding a fearsome sharpness. It was as though he himself was a divine weapon. It's Wang Ju, he's the first to sound the drum. Is he trying to tell everyone that he, Wang Ju, wants to contend for the number one position? The gazes of the crowd landed on this person. Wang Ju, a heavens chosen from the Wang clan of the War Continent. He was ranked number 6 on the Heavenly Fate rankings, and was one of the strongest contenders for the top 3 positions. At this moment, Wang Ju's fist seemed to have turned into a silvery white color as he punched out. In an instant, a loud boom rang out as the sound of a drum reverberated through the air. A terrifying astral wind blew at Wang Ju's long hair, and the drum continued to beat 9 times. A terrifying force bombarded Wang Ju's body, but he stood there unmoving, like an ancient pine tree. Since we are fighting for the heavenly will, we will start from the sound of the drum. How can we fall behind others? As Wang Ju's voice fell, before the 9 echoes ended, his fist once again lashed out with a terrifying sharpness. The crowd could only see a terrifying force slamming into Wang Ju's body. The drums sounded 3 more times, but Wang Ju's fist aura blasted out again. The violent air currents seemed to want to lift Wang Ju up. Another punch was thrown out. He took a step forward and stood in front of the drum, allowing the terrifying wind to blow on his body. His heart was still the same. The people at the side looked at Wang Ju. They had been prepared to sound the drums, but they seemed to have forgotten to do so. Finally, Wang Ju's drum sounded out 18 times, reverberating unceasingly throughout the heavens and earth. 18 echoes of the drum, how powerful! According to the historical records, in the ranking battles of Grand Xia, 18 echoes of the drum were already enough to lock the top 10. The hearts of the spectators mused. This Wang Ju had already sounded the drum when he first joined the Heavenly Fate sect, letting everyone in the world witness his determination. Above the ancient pathway, those from the Wang clan all had smiles on their faces. Wang Ju had already started from the moment he joined the Heavenly Fate sect. Since they were fighting for the Heavenly Fate sect, they would start from the sound of the drum. After Wang Ju, more and more people sounded their drums. However, the majority of them were below the 15th echo mark. Only occasionally, there would be a few who managed to break past the 15th echo mark. And among these people, there were actually quite a few who were already rankers on the Heavenly Fate rankings. As for those who managed to reach the 18th echo mark, there were no more. With over 10,000 people, even if there were 9 gigantic drums, it would still take over 1,000 people to sound each drum. It was extremely time-consuming, yet the crowd was incomparably quiet, as though they were extremely patient. Every 3 years, this was a once-in-a-lifetime event. Even if it was just the first sound of the drum, they would still cherish it. From the moment the drums sounded out, the hearts of the geniuses were already filled with the desire to compete against each other. Naturally, there were also many who didn't manage to sound the drum 9 times. Their voices were filled with boundless disappointment as they left unwillingly. They came to participate in the Heavenly Fate rankings with boundless yearning in their hearts, yet they were all eliminated the moment they joined the Heavenly Fate sect. Naturally, they were filled with reluctance, but reality was always so cruel. After which, another person sounded the drum 17 times, causing many to sigh in admiration. So it turned out that this person was none other than the 9th ranker, Li Yu from the Thousand Ju Alliance. To think that half of the participants didn't even manage to sound the drum 9 times. How terrifying are those 9 gigantic drums? Fan Le silently mused as he stared at the gigantic drum. The number of people who were eliminated actually exceeded half of the participants. This ratio was truly shocking. After all, there weren't many who came here just to make up the numbers. All of them were extremely confident in their own strength. 19 echoes. At this moment, an earth-shattering sound rang out. Fan Li's mouth was still open as he stared at a silhouette in the air. Half of the participants didn't even manage to sound the drum 9 times. Emperor Wind. Qin Wentian stared at the person who spoke. It's Emperor Azure. The others exclaimed in admiration. The 5th ranker on the Heavenly Fate rankings was none other than Emperor Azure. His surname was also Wang, and he had surpassed Wang Ju, breaking the record of Wang Ju. Emperor Azure is so powerful. I wonder if there's anyone who can break his record. Ouyang Zheng also went up, but he only managed to sound the drum 17 times. Qin Wentian glanced at the person beside Emperor Wind, who had also managed to sound the drum 17 times. Originally, he should have been the most dazzling, yet he was suppressed by Emperor Azure. Ouyang Zheng was a Heavens chosen from the Ouyang aristocrat clan, and was ranked number 10 on the Heavenly Fate rankings. Although the drum sounds couldn't be used to determine the final rankings, it was still a form of competition. Especially when Wang Ju took the lead, no one was willing to fall behind. Next, the more powerful characters made their moves. Yang Fan from the Star-Seizing Manor, 16 echoes. Zhao Lai from the Sky Ember Sect, 16 echoes. Hua Feng from the Hua clan, 15 echoes. Duan Qing Shan, 16 echoes. Shirpatian is about to make his move. At this moment, the gazes of the countless spectators converged onto a single person. This person was none other than Shirpatian from the Shir clan. Shirpatian made his move, sounding the drum 20 times, once again setting a new record. As expected of someone from the Shir clan who possesses the bloodline of an ancient demonic beast. How terrifying, the spectators mused. In this ranking battle, there was no doubt that Chen Wang and Shirpatian were the 2 most popular contenders. Great Solar Chen Wang and Shirpatian from the Shir clan, who could contend against the 2 of them? Black-robed figure. At this moment, Qin Wentian noticed a black-robed figure walking up the stairs. His eyes flickered involuntarily. Was this the same black-robed figure that cultivated the devil art? Devil might gushed forth from the black-robed figure as he blasted out with his palm. The sound of the drum trembled violently as the 9 reverberations continued unceasingly. However, this didn't attract the attention of the spectators. Only when the black-robed figure sounded the drum 15 times did the spectators turn their gazes over. The 16th and 17th reverberations caused the spectators to turn their gazes in that direction. However, at this moment, the black-robed figure actually stopped and lowered his arms. He clearly still had some energy remaining, yet he chose to give up on it. After which, he slowly walked forward, as though he didn't care about the result at all. He actually cultivated the devil art? I've never heard of such a person before. He must be a dark horse. Not only that, he's clad in black. It's obvious that he's intentionally concealing his identity. Chen Wang, Great Solar Chen Wang has finally made his move. The crowd saw another figure walking up the stairs. It was none other than Chen Wang, ranked number 2 on the Heavenly Fate rankings. This time around, Hua Taishu didn't participate, so who would be Chen Wang's opponent? The rays of the sun were incomparably dazzling. Chen Wang didn't disappoint the spectators. He was the same as Shirpatian, sounding the drum 20 times. Mu Feng actually made it here. I heard that 3 days ago, he narrowly escaped death. Only to see Mu Feng standing in front of a gigantic drum on the left. After sounding the drum 9 times, he continued on his way, not caring about what others thought of him. Although this was the case, nobody dared to underestimate Mu Feng. What he feared the most was poison. Even for Chen Wang and Shirpatian, if they were to face Mu Feng directly, they would have to be extremely careful. After that, there was another person who attracted the attention of the crowd. That person was none other than Situ Pa, a heavens chosen from the Sword Extinction sect. At this moment, Qin Wentian turned his gaze over, staring at a spot not far away from him. Mo Qingqing seemed to have sensed his gaze as a mischievous smile flashed in her eyes. After which, she continued moving forward. Qin Wentian and the others also walked out and climbed the ancient steps of Great Xia step by step. They lined up in a row and stood in front of the giant drums. It's Zhan Chen, he's about to act. He's following behind Mo Qingqing. It's evident that his infatuation with her has yet to change. Who is that female? She's actually so beautiful as well. Although she's a little inferior compared to Mo Qingqing, she's like a snow lotus on an icy mountain, surpassing many other beauties. Everyone turned to look at Yun Mengyi. Although Yun Mengyi was famous in the unmatched realm, in the entire Grand Xia, only a few knew of her. Xian Yan also went up at this time. What a feast of beauties! Mo Qingqing, Yun Mengyi, and Xian Yan actually went up at the same time. Moreover, there was still Zhan Chen. Other than them, the others in the middle were a complete killjoy. Qin Wentian, Ouyang Guangsheng, Chu Mang, Fan Lu, and Bai Lu Jing. A total of 9 people, just nice enough to occupy the 9 drums. Fatty, I want to see how many drums you can achieve this time around. Xian Yan spoke in a low voice. Evidently, her words were directed at Fan Lu. Fan Lu felt a little guilty. The situation this time around was different from the previous time. What made the spectators even more interested was that these 9 people actually made their moves at the same time. Instantly, the 9 drums sounded out in unison. Chaotic currents of qi swept across the heavens and earth. How terrifying was the might of Qin Wentian's fist. 9 consecutive drum sounds rang out. However, no one paid any attention to him. The majority of the spectators were all focused on Zhan Chen and Mo Qingqing. Occasionally, there would also be some who would pay attention to Yun Mengyi and Xian Yan. The spectators only saw Zhan Chen's entire body bathed in a golden glow as he slashed out with his sword. Not long after, the drum sounds had already reached the 15th drum sound. Not only that, his aura was still as imposing as before. Evidently, he still had some energy left over. Mo Qingqing had already stopped. She only sounded out the 9th drum sound before stopping. However, she didn't leave the area. The spectators behind her didn't rush her either. Taking a few more glances at her was also a form of enjoyment. Fan Lu, Chu Mang, Ouyang Guangsheng, and Bai Lu Jing all stopped. The ones who had the most drum sounds were Bai Lu Jing and Chu Mang, with a total of 16 drum sounds. Xian Yan mustered all her strength and sounded out the 17th drum sound, causing the spectators to sigh in admiration. However, they soon discovered that there were still 3 people who hadn't stopped. Even for the beautiful maiden on the right, she actually managed to sound out the 18th drum sound. As she slashed out with her sword, it was as though she was born from the heavens. What's going on? Why are the participants of this round so strong? Xian Yan sounded out the 17th drum sound, while Yun Mengyi sounded out the 18th drum sound. Zhan Chen and Qin Wentian had also sounded out the 18th drum sound. However, the 2 of them were actually still continuing. The sound of the drum reverberated in the air, as though they were competing against each other. Zhan Chen coldly laughed as he slashed out with all 9 swords. With a roar of rage, the 19th drum sound rang out. It was as though he wanted to break today's record, the 20th drum sound. But as the sound of the drum sound rang out, the towering power contained within it caused Zhan Chen to close his eyes. Qin Wentian's countenance turned solemn as the blood in his body surged. His strength was unparalleled as he punched out once more. It was as though the boundless energy of the heavens and earth had converged together, slamming into the gigantic drum sound. Boom! The 19th drum sound rang out. How is this possible? Expressions of disbelief appeared on the faces of the spectators. This was the first time they had seen 2 participants who had surpassed the 18th drum sound clash against each other. Not only that, they were competing against Zhan Chen. Chapter 356. Who was this person? The gazes of the spectators landed on Qin Wentian, their hearts filled with bewilderment. The majority of them had never heard of this person before. Not only that, the aura radiating from him was only at the peak of the 7th level of Yuanfu. To be able to sound the drum 19 times, there was no need to doubt the strength of his will. Not only that, his attack power must also be incomparably tyrannical, and he must also have a fearsome defense. Zhang Chen's countenance was ice-cold as he swept his gaze over to Qin Wentian. The golden light in his eyes was incomparably terrifying. At this moment, Mo Qingqing was still spectating from the side. Not only that, how could he, Zhang Chen, be defeated? Even if it was just the sound of the drum, there was no way he would lose to Qin Wentian. Releasing his astral souls, Zhang Chen's entire body was engulfed by a terrifying golden tempest, converging into the form of the punishing heavens and earth sword. Rumbling sounds echoed out, breaking through everything in its path, as it once again slammed into the gigantic drum. Boom! After the 20th reverberation, the fearsome might was reflected back, shattering the golden armor on Zhang Chen's body. His heart trembled violently. He knew that if the drum continued to reverberate, he would definitely be injured. However, this reverberation didn't stop. He turned his gaze onto Qin Wentian as a cold light flickered in his eyes. However, he only saw Qin Wentian stretching out his finger and pressing it downwards. A terrifying might broke through everything as the reverberations of the drum reverberated through the air. Boom! The heavens and earth trembled. Similarly, 20 reverberations, tying the record. This single reverberation caused the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Qin Wentian felt the terrifying might sweeping over him, yet he didn't move an inch. His heart was as calm as still water, as though he was back in the royal capital of Grand Xia. Blood dyed the heavens and earth red, as the boundless will of the spectators gushed into his mind. How terrifying! Zhang Chen hesitated for a moment. At this moment, the reverberations stopped, and the moment he hesitated, he had already lost his chance. However, 20 reverberations, tying the record, was still incomparably dazzling. He had achieved the same feat as Chen Wang and Sherpa Dian. Although this didn't represent anything, at the very least, it allowed the spectators to see the magnificence of Zhang Chen. How can your lowly heart win against my undying will? As the sound of his voice faded, the crowd only saw Qin Wentian jabbing out with his finger again. Runic inscriptions congregated in the air, transforming into a vortex that pierced into the gigantic drum. Boom! 21 echoes rang out, breaking the record. This sound, along with Qin Wentian's voice, echoed throughout the world, causing the hearts of countless people to tremble. This person had provoked and looked down on Zhang Chen. His heart was resolute. How can your lowly heart win against my undying will? Although this was an entrance ticket, he still wanted to win. Not only that, he was standing together with Zhang Chen, and Mo Qingqing was just beside him. How could he lose to Zhang Chen? Qin Wentian stepped forward, followed by the people around him, smiles on their faces as they walked forward, leaving only their backs to the spectators. This young man's demeanor was extraordinary, but sadly, his cultivation base was too low. He was only at the 7th level of Yuanfu, yet he dared to challenge Zhang Chen. At this point, there weren't many people who had yet to sound the drum. Moreover, those experts who were ranked at the top had already sounded the drum. Following the ancient roads on both sides, the crowd moved forward. Along the wide corridor, people squeezed against each other as they rushed forward. By the time the drums were sounded, half of the people had been eliminated. What awaited them next would be even more dangerous. They would have to face the river of life and death. The river of life and death was a true test of life and death. Those who passed would live, and those who fell would die. Since ancient times, it was unknown how many heroes had fallen in the river of life and death. After Qin Wentian and the rest ascended the staircase, they could see the river of life and death. Or perhaps, it would be more appropriate to call it the lake of life and death. The width of the river of life and death was the same as the ancient staircase of Grand Xia, and could accommodate over 1,000 people. As for the length of the river, it was over 100,000 meters. To Wu Xiu, this distance wasn't too far. Any one of these geniuses would be able to cross it in a short amount of time. However, to cross the river of life and death, it wouldn't be so easy to cross it with thousands of people. What was even more terrifying was that the river of life and death was filled with corrosive energy. Yuanfu cultivators would die without a doubt if they were to fall into it. The crowd only saw Old Man Tianji and the rest of the experts from the 36 transcendent powers flying through the air, arriving at the other end of the river of life and death. Once, this river of life and death was the heavenly mirror of Grand Xia. As long as one stood guard at the other end of the river of life and death, they would be able to defend against 10,000 enemies. Old Man Tianji stared ahead. At this moment, everyone was already facing the river of life and death. A distance of 100 meters might seem short, but it was destined that many would die here. Old Man Tianji lit up a thin incense stick. It was so thin and short that it would burn out within 100 breaths of time. However, these people needed to cross the river of life and death before the incense stick burned out. At the very least, they needed to cross 100 meters in an instant. Under the circumstances where so many people were traveling together, crossing 100 meters in an instant, one could very well imagine how difficult it would be. They would definitely fight against each other, resulting in chaos. The incense stick has been burned. Those who fail to cross the river of life and death will be eliminated. Old Man Tianji calmly spoke. Move out. Let's go. Qin Wentian roared. The thousands of experts roared in anger as they dashed out, their speed as fast as lightning. An incense stick's worth of time, a distance of 100,000 meters. They had to maintain their fastest speed at all times, they couldn't afford to waste even the slightest bit of time. How could they not advance with all their might? Thousands of people were madly sprinting across the river of life and death. The impact of this scene was simply too great, too shocking. Some of them had seen the might of 10,000 horses galloping across the river of life and death before. But right now, it was actually 10,000 spears galloping across the river of life and death. The terrifying astral winds in the air felt as though they could tear people apart. Not only that, countless terrifying auras gushed forth, causing chaos to fill the air. There were already many people who had launched their attacks. Scram! Someone behind Qin Wentian roared in rage. A sword slashed out, as fast as lightning. At the same time, that person stepped on a flying sword, wanting to flee. I will guard the rear, you guys move forward. Qin Wentian roared. With a flip of his palm, a terrifying demonic imprint blasted out, colliding with the ancient sword. His eyes flashed with coldness as he frenziedly waved his palms. A moment later, numerous terrifying rocks shot out, blocking the path of those behind him. At the same time, there were also people launching attacks in front of Qin Wentian and the others, blocking their path. In fact, above Qin Wentian's group, there were even people unleashing terrifying attacks, wanting to force them into the river of life and death, causing them to lose their chance. Chaos, the situation at this moment was extremely chaotic. Accompanied by a light splash sound, someone fell into the river of life and death as he screamed in agony. In an instant, his body corroded, turning into white bones. After which, even his bones were corroded away, vanishing from sight. Qin Wentian swept his gaze over, feeling a sense of terror in his heart. This was only the first stage of the trial and it was already so cruel. How intense was the competition between geniuses? Qingcheng. Qin Wentian cast a glance to the side. At this moment, the situation was too chaotic, it was extremely difficult to even move. Everyone only cared about rushing forward. However, he discovered that Imo Qingcheng was still fine. Maybe it was because of her beauty that could topple empires, but no one dared to act ruthlessly against her. Maybe this was the innate advantage of beauties. There was no enmity of life and death, it was just a matter of blocking the path. As long as Imo Qingcheng didn't take the initiative to offend others, how could those experts bear to destroy a flower like her? Chu Mang and Fan Le stood guard at the front, golden arrows hovering above their heads. Fan Li's bloodline was fully activated, bathing in golden flames, resembling a fiery god of war. Peng! Someone retaliated, wanting to block their path. Fan Le and Chu Mang coldly snorted. Chu Mang broke through the attack, while Fan Li's arrow shot towards the person who attacked. That person wanted to deflect the arrow, but the arrow suddenly changed directions. His countenance drastically changed, and he abruptly turned his body, only to be met with the arrows of Chu Mang and Fan Le. Piercing sounds rang out as the person's head was pierced through by the arrow, falling from the sky. Given the speed of Fan Le and the rest, they would be able to catch up. They wouldn't take the initiative to kill others to block their path, but if someone intentionally tried to block their path, they could only do so. After consuming the limit break pellet, Chu Mang's cultivation base had already reached the pinnacle of Yuanfu. Peng! At this moment, a terrifying pressure bore down on them. It was as though numerous ancient mountains were descending from the heavens, pressing down on Chu Mang, Fan Le, and the rest. Not only that, in front of them, there were also ancient mountains appearing. Situpa. Qin Wentian inclined his head, only to see Situpa standing in the air, clad in astral stone armor, incomparably resplendent as he launched an attack towards them. With a flicker of his silhouette, Qin Wentian soared up into the air, lifting his palms to shatter the ancient mountains. Only to see a sword cascading down from the skies, it was none other than Situpa's sword of extinction. And at the same instant, a gravitational force bore down on Qin Wentian and the rest. A gigantic leg descended from the heavens, containing a towering might within, enveloping Qin Wentian, Chu Mang, and the rest within it. Duan Qingshan. Qin Wentian's countenance was ice cold. Situpa had actually joined forces with Duan Qingshan to launch a sneak attack on them. The combat prowess of these two was extremely high. Duan Qingshan was ranked number 25 in the Heavenly Fate rankings, and Situpa definitely had the same level of combat prowess. Chu Mang's great axe cleaved downwards, while Ouyang Guangxing's body was enveloped in flames and lightning. How could Zhan Chen miss this opportunity? His silhouette flickered as a golden sword slashed towards Qin Wentian. In that instant, they were attacked from the front and rear. However, at this moment, a towering devilish might gushed forth, akin to a bolt of lightning. A black devil spear pierced through everything, aiming for Zhan Chen. Zhan Chen's countenance drastically changed, he stared at the black-robed figure as he roared in rage, "It's you again." Yunmengyi also acted. She dashed towards Situpa, as a terrifying frost energy gushed out from her body, wanting to freeze the entire space. Chaos, the entire space was in a state of chaos. The people behind them would also launch a sneak attack, before fleeing from their sight. It would be best if all of them were eliminated together. The gazes of many in the crowd also noticed this battle, as they couldn't help but feel bewildered. Who would have thought that the person who broke the record would have so much influence? He had so many enemies and so many friends. Those who wanted to destroy them were all extraordinary characters. Zhan Chen, Duan Qingshan, Situpa. At this moment, a star-seizing palm imprint appeared, grabbing towards them, causing the expressions on the faces of the crowd to stiffen. Yang Fan was one of them. Two people from the star-seizing manor simultaneously attacked Qin Wentian. Chapter 357. Qin Wentian's eyes flickered with a terrifying coldness. The power of his bloodline erupted forth as a third eye appeared in the center of his brows. Yunmengyi, freeze this space. Qin Wentian's voice was ice cold. Yunmengyi slashed out with her sword as a terrifying coldness gushed forth from her. The entire space seemed to be frozen by the coldness, causing frost to form on the bodies of the spectators. Qin Wentian and the rest didn't continue advancing. Instead, they chose to stop and engage in battle on the surface of the river of life and death. This scene caused the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Were these people crazy? Zhan Chen, Yang Fan, and the rest frowned. Although they wanted to kill Qin Wentian, to them, the ranking battle was more important. Hence, Their will to battle had diminished. Kill Duan Qingshan. Qin Wentian's voice was as cold as ice. He had said before that if they met again, he would definitely kill Duan Qingshan. Yet now, Duan Qingshan actually dared to act against him? This time around, he would use Duan Qingshan's life to pay the price. The black-robed figure was delaying Zhan Chen, while Chu Mang was fighting against Situ Pa. Bai Lu Jing and Ouyang Guangsheng were defending against the attacks of Yang Fan and the other two from the star-seizing manor. Yun Mengyi's gaze shifted onto Duan Qingshan as an extreme coldness erupted forth. Duan Qingshan's entire body was covered in frost, the coldness so cold that it pierced right into his bones. Abruptly, a formless energy blasted onto him as a fearsome mandate of will gushed into his sea of consciousness. Inclining his head, he stared at Qin Wentian. His countenance was incredibly unsightly to behold. A terrifying primordial demon had descended upon his sea of consciousness, wanting to devour him whole. Not only that, the force of the attack caused his sea of consciousness to tremble violently. The attack of the mandate of will actually gushed into his sea of consciousness. Duan Qingshan's countenance turned ashen as he retreated with explosive speed. He stomped out with his foot, aiming for Qin Wentian and the rest, only to see Qin Wentian casually waving his hand as a formless energy blasted apart the attack of the gigantic foot. Wait, this mandate of will should be at the second level. Duan Qingshan's countenance turned ashen. How was this possible? Qin Wentian was only at the 7th level of Yuanfu, how could he have already comprehended the 2nd level of mandates? That was the entry level of Heavenly Dipper. Yun Mengyi's speed was exceedingly fast. She had also comprehended the mandate of wind, and in addition to the mandate of ice, she was even faster than Duan Qingshan. Slashing out with her sword, she descended from the 9 heavens. Duan Qingshan's countenance grew incredibly unsightly to behold. In the unmatched realm, only a few people knew of Yun Mengyi. Yet this nameless nobody was actually this tyrannical. Duan Qingshan howled in rage as the power of his astral soul erupted forth. It was as though a pair of gigantic feet had appeared in the air, blasting upwards. However, he saw Qin Wentian madly rushing at him with terrible killing intent. Right now, Qin Wentian only had one thought in his mind, and that was to kill Duan Qingshan. Duan Qingshan's countenance was as cold as ice. However, Qin Wentian raised his palm and pressed it against the air. In an instant, a surge of energy like that of a ferocious beast slammed into Duan Qingshan's body, causing him to groan in pain. The heavenly sword technique descended. Duan Qingshan's face was as pale as paper, but no one helped him. Boom! An ancient bell rang out in the air, reverberating in his heart. After which, Qin Wentian arrived. His eyes were incomparably demonic as a third eye appeared in the center of his brows. Sweeping his gaze over, he blasted out a palm imprint. Duan Qingshan howled in rage, he had no choice but to clash head-on against Qin Wentian. A boundlessly powerful force blasted into his body, directly ignoring his defenses as it bore down on him, causing him to be pushed down towards the river of life and death. Splashing sounds rang out, this was the sound of the river water. No. Duan Qingshan turned his head back, his countenance as pale as paper. Qin Wentian's palm was already pressing down on him, ignoring everything else as he continued to press downwards. I've said it before, I will kill you. A cold voice rang out. Qin Wentian blasted out another palm strike as a towering might blasted down. With a rumbling sound, Duan Qingshan's body was instantly corroded by the river of life and death. No. Duan Qingshan's countenance contorted with malevolence, but in the next instant, his body turned into a pile of white bones. Duan Qingshan had fallen. The spectators on both sides of the river of life and death felt their hearts pounding violently when they saw the pile of white bones disappearing into the river. That was Duan Qingshan, one of the top 36 rankers on the Heavenly Fate rankings. However, he was actually killed by someone in the river of life and death. Although the river of life and death was cruel, Duan Qingshan had actually fallen at the first checkpoint after the sounding of the drum. This caused the spectators to sigh at the cruelty of the Heavenly Fate rankings. At the same time, it also caused the spectators to seriously reevaluate this young man. Who was this young man exactly? He had many friends by his side, yet there were so many experts who wanted to kill him. Not only that, at the moment when the drums sounded, he had already broken the record, seizing the first position. At that time, the spectators didn't think that this meant anything. After all, his cultivation base was the weakest. But after that, he killed Duan Qingshan. Although he borrowed the strength of others, there was no need to doubt Qin Wentian's own strength. If not, how could he have suppressed Duan Qingshan and blasted him into the river of life and death? Those from the Ouyang aristocrat clan naturally witnessed this scene as their countenances turned incredibly unsightly. Although Duan Qingshan wasn't a member of the Ouyang aristocrat clan, he was still a heavens chosen of their Ouyang aristocrat clan. Yet now, he was actually killed by Qin Wentian. Their hearts were filled with complex emotions. Back then, when Qin Wentian stepped into the Ouyang aristocrat clan, Qin Wentian was still so weak. But now, he actually had the strength to kill Duan Qingshan, and even had a good relationship with Ouyang Guangsheng. As for Ouyang Ting, her countenance was as pale as paper, as though her soul had left her body. How could this be? How could this be? Duan Qingshan was killed by Qin Wentian. At this moment, Ouyang Ting's eyes were bloodshot, she didn't know what to do. Her mind kept telling herself that it was impossible, but the truth was right before her eyes. Why did things end up like this? Shouldn't it be the opposite? Duan Qingshan should have killed Qin Wentian instead. All of this happened in an extremely short period of time. Qin Wentian's silhouette instantly soared up the skies, his gaze sweeping over the silhouettes of the spectators. Zhan Chen, Situ Pe, and the rest knew that they couldn't afford to waste any more time. They soared through the air, no longer willing to waste any more time. Let's go quickly. Qin Wentian and the rest also sprinted forward. There were still people fighting in front of them, falling into the river of life and death unceasingly, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble with fear. Those who died were all geniuses of their respective regions. The incense was about to burn out, and the crowd landed on the city walls at the end of the river of life and death, passing through the city gates. A raging wind gusted by as Qin Wentian and the rest landed on the ground. The incense had already burned out, and they all drew in a deep breath. They didn't expect that the battles in the river of life and death would be so dangerous. Luckily, they had all arrived, and none of them had fallen behind. Let's go. Qin Wentian and the rest passed through the city gates and met with Zhan Chen's group. Their gazes were incomparably sharp, and their killing intent permeated the air. Consider yourselves lucky. Zhan Chen's eyes flickered with a golden light as he coldly stated. After which, he glanced at the black-robed figure. This person had spoiled his plans several times already. Qin Wentian also glanced at the black-robed figure as he nodded his head, many thanks. The countenance of the black-robed figure flickered. His eyes exuded a sense of elegance, and this caused Qin Wentian to suspect that the black-robed figure who cultivated the devil art was actually a female. This devil art was extremely tyrannical, and those who cultivated it could easily suffer a backlash. If it was a female cultivator, how strong would her heart be? However, Qin Wentian didn't know if he would be able to find out the identity of the black-robed figure after the ranking battle. After passing through the city gates, the number of people remaining decreased once again. Another half of the participants remained in the river of life and death. Currently, although there were still many people gathered here, compared to before, the number of participants had already decreased by quite a bit. However, those who remained were all elites, and as time passed, those who remained would only grow stronger and stronger. For example, Duan Qingshan, who was originally ranked in the top 36, naturally had the ability to challenge the top 36. However, he was still killed in the end. His luck was simply too bad. Not only that, during the ranking battle, there would be many who had grudges against each other, eliminating some of the more powerful participants. However, this was precisely the kind of test the Heavenly Fate rankings required. Only when the sand is washed away by the great waves can one see the gold. But if one wanted to rely on luck to walk all the way to the end, it was impossible. At this moment, in front of the eyes of the crowd, there were numerous platforms for the selection of generals. Old Man Tianji and the rest were still leisurely walking in the air, gazing down at everything below them. On the left and right of them, countless silhouettes appeared. It was as crowded as ever, but they were still able to see everything clearly. It was rumored that although the current Grand Xia still retained much of its ancient glory, there were still many changes. For example, outside of the River of Life and Death, there should have been many ancient halls, but they had all been destroyed. After passing the flight of steps, the only thing left was the River of Life and Death. As for the history of Grand Xia, no one bothered to look into it. As long as they could personally witness the ranking battle, they would be satisfied. This place used to be the training grounds of the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. There are over 100 platforms here, and as soon as you step on it, an illusory figure of the same level of strength will appear. For those below the yellow battle robe, they will all be eliminated. You may begin now, Old Man Tianji calmly stated. As the sound of his voice faded, Great Sun Chen Wang's silhouette flickered, akin to a resplendent sun as he stood on the platform in the center. This platform wasn't large, so if he was blasted off it, the battle would be over. A bright light flashed as an illusory figure appeared in front of Chen Wang. This figure was clad in red armor, and exuded a terrifying aura. He was the same as Chen Wang, at the peak of the 9th level of Yuanfu. Bzzz. This armored warrior wielded a long spear in his hands, instantly stabbing out towards Chen Wang. Chen Wang's eyes flickered, it was as though a sun could be seen in his eyes. Instantly, his opponent's body was engulfed in flames, and with a wave of his hand, the armored warrior's body was instantly engulfed in flames. After which, it transformed into a beam of light that fused into Chen Wang's body. Momentarily, Chen Wang was clad in a red armor. After which, two other armored warriors appeared. These two were clad in orange-colored armor. Chen Wang stepped out, unleashing his great solar universe art. Blasting out with his palms, the two armored warriors were instantly incinerated. Momentarily, the color of Chen Wang's armor turned orange. For the battle of armors, there will be more and more powerful armored warriors appearing. The colors of their armors can be divided into crimson, orange, yellow, green, azure, indigo, violet. If you can pass all 7 stages, you will be clad in a set of violet armor and stand out amongst the crowd. In fact, there were even some who passed all 7 stages and fought against a violet gold armored warrior. Ouyang Guangxing spoke in a low voice. After this stage was over, the armor they wore would be able to directly reflect their strength. Chapter 358. Chen Wang's strength was terrifying. In the blink of an eye, he defeated the 3 yellow armored warriors, and a layer of illusory yellow battle armor appeared on his body. These 3 warriors have a cultivation base at the peak of the 9th level of Yuanfu, and their mandates have reached the perfection boundary. Their spear techniques are terrifying. Qin Wendian understood in his heart when he saw this scene. For the first 3 battles, there was an additional armored warrior. However, the strength of these armored warriors were all the same. It was just that when 3 of them worked together, they were able to complement each other, and their combined might was many times more terrifying compared to a single armored warrior. For the 4th battle, a green armored warrior appeared on Chen Wang's battle platform. His cultivation base was still at the peak of Yuanfu, but his spear techniques were even more terrifying. Chen Wang's body shimmered with the light of the sun as he unleashed his great solar universe art. Not only that, his 2nd level mandates were also at the 2nd level, yet the green armored warrior was still able to clash head-on with him. However, he was still defeated by Chen Wang. More and more people walked up the platform, accepting the challenge. Starting from the green armored warrior, they slaughtered their way through. Those below the yellow battle robes would all be eliminated. This meant that they had to pass all 3 battles, and defeat the 3 yellow armored warriors. If not, they would be eliminated as well. Even more people were staring at Chen Wang, their hearts pounding unceasingly. At this moment, Chen Wang was already clad in an illusory azure battle robe. He had already defeated 2 green-armored warriors with second-level mandates. And now, Chen Wang was crazily fighting against 3 blue-armored warriors. All 3 of them had a cultivation base at the peak of Yuanfu, and their mandates were all at the second level. Not only that, although their weapons were all long spears, their mandates were all different. Their combined might caused the hearts of the spectators to tremble. This battle platform should have been left behind by the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. How marvelous! Qin Wentian murmured. Chen Wang was even more terrifying than him, and it wasn't just because his mandate had reached the second level. However, this was only normal. Back then, Chen Wang was the second ranker on the Heavenly Fate rankings. How could geniuses like Chen Wang waste their time to grow from a low-level Yuanfu cultivator to where he was today? It wouldn't be too difficult for Chen Wang to break through to Heavenly Dipper. Not only that, once Chen Wang stepped into the Heavenly Dipper realm, he would be able to insta-kill any ordinary Heavenly Dipper realm cultivator. This was what a Heaven's Chosen should be, the future pillar of a transcendent power. He won. The crowd had looks of astonishment on their faces. Chen Wang had defeated 3 blue-armored warriors, and was clad in a blue battle robe, looking incomparably majestic. At this moment, a purple-armored warrior appeared on the battle platform he was on. He was incomparably solemn, and his eyes caused people to feel a deep sense of fear. Chen Wang is so strong. For mandates, the first level is the foundation. It can be divided into the initial boundary, advanced boundary, transformation boundary, and perfection boundary. After that, one can continue to comprehend and break through to the second level. However, the second level is also divided into the initial boundary, advanced boundary, transformation boundary, and perfection boundary. Earlier, although the blue-armored warriors had all broken through to the second level, they were all at the initial boundary. What about the violet-armored warrior? Qin Wentian stared at the battle platform Chen Wang was on. From this battle alone, he could see what level of combat prowess these people belonged to. He had comprehended 3 types of mandates: mandate of force, mandate of dream sleep, and mandate of demonic demons. All of them had already reached the perfection boundary of the first level. Not only that, his mandate of force had already broken through to the second level. The first level of mandate of force was the void shockwave of force. His mandate of force was omnipresent, capable of killing his opponents through space. Not only that, the second level of mandate of force was built on the foundation of the perfection boundary of the first level. In other words, the might of the void shockwave of force had already been infused into it. Countless gazes landed on Chen Wang. They wanted to see exactly how strong Chen Wang was. And Chen Wang didn't disappoint them. He began to unleash his absolute strength, his entire body, flesh, and blood transformed into flames, akin to the sovereign king of fire in the depths of lava. Those from the great solar Chen clan smiled and nodded in satisfaction when they saw Chen Wang's performance. Only in this state would Chen Wang be able to unleash the full might of the Great Solar Universe art. The Great Solar Universe art circulated throughout his entire body. Someone at the 9th level of Yuanfu? Those from the Great Solar Chen clan coldly laughed. Let alone someone at the 9th level of Yuanfu, even if someone ranked on the Heavenly Fate rankings fought against Chen Wang, they wouldn't dare to touch him. The Great Solar Universe art emanating from Chen Wang could directly vaporize them. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, Chen Wang defeated the purple-armored warrior, wearing a purple battle robe. Chen Wang's mandate of fire is at the second level, ignition, the second level, solidified flames. Earlier, when the violet-ranked warrior was grabbed by Chen Wang, his body was instantly transformed into solidified flames before he was forcibly incinerated into nothingness. Most probably, the second level of mandate of fire has already surpassed the initial boundary and is at the advanced boundary. Nobody would dare to touch him. Who would be able to contend against him? This was the first time the crowd truly understood how powerful Chen Wang was. He wanted to don the most magnificent battle robe, seize the heavenly fate rankings, and contend for the number 1 position. After Hua Taishu, he was already the strongest ranker on the heavenly fate rankings. Now that Hua Taishu wasn't participating in the ranking battle, how could he, Chen Wang, not seize the number 1 position? Chen Wang won yet another battle, defeating 2 terrifying violet golden ranked warriors. In the vision of the crowd, 3 resplendent platinum-ranked warriors appeared, staring down at Chen Wang with disdain. The aura exuding from them was incomparably terrifying. Finally, Chen Wang wasn't able to win this battle as he was blasted off the platform by the 3 platinum-ranked warriors. But even so, his performance was still dazzling enough. Chen Wang was clad in a violet gold battle robe. Most probably, no one would be able to surpass him. Only, no one knew if Shirpatian would be able to match Chen Wang's battle robe. More and more experts ascended the platform. This time around, it was a true elimination round. Those who couldn't suppress those at the same cultivation level as them would be eliminated if they didn't pass the 3rd round. Even the weakest among those who could remain were able to defeat 3 opponents at the peak of Yuanfu with mandates at the perfection boundary. One could very well imagine how terrifying the later rounds would be. After Shirpatian ascended the platform, the crowd was once again filled with excitement. This continued until Shirpatian also donned a violet gold battle robe, showing off his might, as well as the fact that he wasn't any weaker than Chen Wang. Both Chen Wang and Shirpatian were extremely powerful, far surpassing the rest. Emperor Azure, Wang Ju, and the rest were only clad in indigo battle robes, not violet. There was no need to mention violet gold. Compared to Chen Wang and Shirpatian, they were on a whole different level. After all, the violet-ranked warriors they faced had already stepped into the advanced boundary. It wasn't strange for them to be defeated. But of course, if they fought with their lives on the line, they might still be able to win. But even so, this also meant that Emperor Azure and Wang Ju's mandates had already stepped into the 2nd level. If not, how could they be clad in indigo battle robes? Are they starting to reveal their brilliance? The lineup for this year's Heavenly Fate rankings is truly terrifying. The hearts of the crowd trembled. Both Emperor Azure and Wang Ju had actually comprehended the 2nd level of mandates. Qin Wentian stood there, staring at the battle before him. He could only feel his heart pounding, as an intense pressure bore down on him. It seemed that he had still underestimated the difficulty of the Heavenly Fate rankings. Those who were once ranked in the top 10 were already far ahead of Duan Qingshan. If Duan Qingshan stood in front of them, he would be easily defeated. Even if they were both ranked in the Heavenly Fate rankings, the disparity between them would still be too great. The top 3 rankers of the Heavenly Fate rankings. Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath. To him, this was an extremely difficult challenge. Zhan Chen, is he hiding his strength? Qin Wentian mused. Zhan Chen was ranked number 11 on the Heavenly Fate rankings a few years ago, and now that he had obtained the Gold Element Ancient Scroll, he was even more demonic than before. How strong was he exactly now? Qin Wentian discovered that Zhan Chen had merely donned the yellow-colored battle robe. His eyes flickered with a golden light, as though he didn't care what others thought of him. Zhan Chen, is he hiding his strength? Or is this really all he can do? Many speculated. The vast majority of the participants were either eliminated or donned the yellow-colored battle robes. After all, it was extremely rare to find someone who could defeat someone at the peak of the Heavenly Fate rankings who had comprehended the 2nd level of mandates. This also made the violet gold battle robes of Chen Wang and Shirpatian even more dazzling. However, there was another person who attracted the attention of the crowd. This person was clad in a black robe, and his features couldn't be seen clearly. At this moment, an illusory green-colored battle robe had already been draped over his body. His cultivation base is at the 8th level of Yuanfu. Hence, his opponents are all at the 8th level of Yuanfu as well. It's just that for the first 3 battles, their mandates were all at the perfection boundary, and for the 4th battle, their mandates were all at the 2nd level. There's no disparity in their mandates, the only disparity is their cultivation base. This black-robed man cultivates a devilish art that's extremely terrifying. Hence, even if his opponent's mandates were at the second level of mandates, he would still be able to win. The crowd discovered that the black-robed man was getting stronger and stronger as the battle progressed. Even the spectators in the hallway took notice of this man. That was the chaotic art of the heavenly devil. There was actually someone who dared to cultivate this long-lost and tyrannical devil art. Wasn't he afraid of his body exploding or turning into a devil? Finally, the black-robed man donned an azure battle robe. Other than Chen Wang and Shirpatian, this was the most dazzling. Seems like I have a huge advantage. Qin Wentian laughed. His cultivation base was at the 7th level of Yuanfu, which meant that his opponents would also be at the 7th level of Yuanfu. His silhouette flickered as Qin Wentian stepped out, landing on an empty battle platform. The instant his foot landed, a brilliant light flashed as a mysterious energy enveloped the platform. After which, an armored warrior with a cultivation base at the peak of the 7th level of Yuanfu appeared. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he punched out with his fist. Boom! Annihilation. After which, the two combatants appeared. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he punched out. This time, 2 punches, annihilation. For the third battle, all 3 of the armored warriors were annihilated. This time, 3 punches. How fast, it's that fellow again. The spectators noticed Qin Wentian. He was the one who broke the record for today, the one who killed Duan Qingshan on the River of Life and Death. Qin Wentian was starting to display his strength again. Although he had a cultivation base at the 7th level of Yuanfu, his combat prowess was extremely terrifying. On the platform, a green armored warrior appeared. 2nd level of mandate? Qin Wentian laughed. He was merely at the 7th level of Yuanfu, so what if his mandate was at the 2nd level? His silhouette flickered again as he instantly appeared in front of his opponent. His terrifying might directly collided with the long spear of his opponent as a terrifying shockwave blasted out. The spectators only saw a flash of light as the green armored warrior exploded into pieces. Qin Wentian donned an azure battle robe. This. The countenances of the spectators froze. From the looks of it, Qin Wentian would definitely be able to equip an azure battle robe. Chapter 359. Although the green armored warrior was at the same level as Qin Wentian, his mandate of mandate had already reached the 2nd level. But even so, the instant he clashed with Qin Wentian, he was instantly annihilated by Qin Wentian. From this, one could see how tyrannical Qin Wentian's attacks were. Even if one's mandate of mandate was at the same level, they still wouldn't be a match for him. Since this green armored warrior could kill Duan Qingshan, his attacks should definitely be at the peak of Yuanfu. Even if the will of a 7th level Yuanfu warrior was stronger than his, he would still be suppressed. This is very normal. I wonder who he is, to actually have such an attack prowess. Sadly, he's only at the 7th level of Yuanfu. If he was a little stronger, maybe he could step into the 9th level of Yuanfu before participating in the Heavenly Fate rankings. At that time, he would definitely be able to contend for the top 5 rankings. Even now, with his current strength, he has a high chance of entering the top 36. More and more spectators began to notice Qin Wentian. Ever since he first sounded the drum, he had gradually attracted the attention of the spectators. First, he killed Duan Qingshan in the River of Life and Death. And now, with his cultivation base at the 7th level of Yuanfu, he was able to display an outstanding performance in this round. At this moment, 2 green armored warriors appeared. These 2 warriors were clad in azure battle armor, and exuded a terrifying aura. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted by as the 2 warriors simultaneously dashed towards Qin Wentian. Their long spears stabbed out, one on the left and one on the right, as though they wanted to seal Qin Wentian's movements. However, they only saw Qin Wentian twisting his body as he blasted out with both his palms. He actually used his fists to directly collide with the long spears. However, his fists were covered in demonic scales, and his mandate of force and mandate of demons erupted forth in an instant. In addition to his own terrifying strength, a formless shockwave flowed through the long spear and blasted into the body of the green-robed warrior. A beam of light flashed past, destroying the green-robed warrior. This power. The crowd scrutinized Qin Wendian seriously. This kind of attack power was too terrifying. Qin Wendian began to use the second realm of force, the void shockwave, in addition to his own attack power. Although the green-robed warrior was strong, he was still in the same realm as Qin Wendian. The warrior's martial will did not have an advantage. How could he not be destroyed by Qin Wendian, who was almost invincible in the same realm? Force. Qin Wendian was proficient in the mandate of force. No matter what methods you used, he would use his strongest strength to break them apart. By the time you realized your mistake, you would have already been destroyed by his strength. Next were the 3 blue-armored warriors. That's the blue-armored warrior. If he wins again, he'll be able to wear the blue robe, and other than Chen Wang and Shirpatian, he'll be just like the other blue-robed warriors. He'll be the most dazzling, and from the looks of it, he won't be under too much pressure. Mustang, Luo Huan and Bai Lu Yi didn't participate in the ranking battle. They were squeezed into the crowd to spectate, and when they heard the discussions of the spectators, they couldn't help but feel agitated in their hearts. Luo Huan, don't you think I'm useless as a teacher? I didn't even teach Wendian anything, yet he's already become so powerful in such a short span of a few years. Mustang sighed in his heart. Qin Wendian's cultivation speed was too fast, to the point where he felt that he had wasted all his years. Teacher, everyone has their own fortuitous encounters. Although Wendian's talent is powerful, back then in the Sky Harmony City, who knew how powerful he would be and how far he would be able to walk? At that time, you didn't hesitate to bring us to the Sky Harmony City, and that was already the greatest kindness you can show to junior apprentice brother Wendian. Junior apprentice brother is a sentimental person, and he would naturally respect teacher. Old man, you shouldn't keep thinking about that. Luo Huan persuaded. She also knew that when a teacher was stronger than their disciple, they would display an imposing aura in front of their disciple. But if one day, the teacher discovered that their disciple was stronger than them, and would only grow stronger and stronger, it was inevitable that the teacher would feel that he wasn't worthy of his disciple. Thus, a gap would form between the teacher and the disciple. Qin Wendian wasn't such a person, and Luo Huan hoped that Mustang wouldn't think that way as well. If not, the relationship between the teacher and the disciple would only grow more and more distant. Fine, you only know how to talk. Fan Lu is already very powerful, you should work hard in your cultivation as well. Mustang laughed. Luo Huan hugged his arm as she smiled. Don't worry, from now on I will follow this junior brother Wendian. I'm not afraid that he wouldn't protect me and my mother. Mustang shook his head with a bitter smile. Beside them, Bai Lu Yi was extremely interested. It seemed like Qin Wendian's experiences back then were extremely rich. Even his teacher and senior apprentice sister weren't as powerful as him. Just like what Qin Wendian had told her, he came from a small country called Chu, and he had persevered step by step until he had today's achievements. I hope you do well in the Heavenly Fate rankings. Mo Qingcheng, she's there as well. You have to obtain a good result, and let the people of Grand Xia, as well as the Pill Emperor Hall, witness that you two are an immortal couple. Bai Lu Yi silently gave her blessings to Qin Wendian in her heart. Her gaze then shifted onto that beautiful silhouette, Mo Qingcheng. She's so beautiful. Maybe only she and Qin Wendian are a match made in heaven. Bai Lu Yi smiled. She didn't know why, but there was a strange feeling in her heart. She felt a little sour, but even more than that, she still wished Qin Wendian well. Qin Wendian had chased after Qin Wendian all the way to the moon continent because of Mo Qingcheng, and even risked his life to kill Hua Xiaoyun. How could they not be together? Qin Wendian, who was still in the midst of battle, naturally wouldn't know Bai Lu Yi's thoughts. At this moment, an illusory indigo robe had already appeared on his body. This indicated that he had already defeated 3 indigo-ranked warriors. Violet, Qin Wentian is going to challenge a violet-ranked warrior. Once he wins, he would be able to wear the violet battle robe and become the #1 contender under Chen Wang and Shirpadian. Would he be able to win? Out of the 100 platforms, Qin Wentian's platform attracted the most attention compared to the other platforms. In fact, he occupied more than half of the attention because of the violet-ranked warrior. Although the violet-ranked warrior was only at the 7th level of Yuanfu, his mandate of Daos was at the 2nd level. Not only that, his mandate was at the advanced boundary of the 2nd level. Spear, his opponent's weapon had always been a spear. Qin Wentian stared at the violet-ranked warrior. He had no idea what the mandate of the violet-ranked warrior was, and how strong would it be when it reached the advanced boundary of the 2nd level. For this battle, he had to win no matter what. This was his conviction. Only by fighting against a violet-ranked warrior at the advanced boundary would he be able to gauge how terrifying Chen Wang, who was at the peak of Yuanfu, was. Chi, chi. An ear-piercing sound rang out as Qin Wentian only saw terrifying arcs of lightning flickering on the tip of his opponent's spear. The mandate of lightning. Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened. The power of lightning was extremely terrifying. If his opponent's mandate was at the 2nd level, as he thought of this, the bloodline in Qin Wentian's body surged. His physique was akin to that of a demonic beast from the primordial era, and at the same instant, his opponent made his move. A spear pierced out, accompanied by the roar of a lightning dragon. In an instant, a thunderous boom echoed out as Qin Wentian's body was enveloped in a dazzling light. Qin Wentian groaned in pain as his blood and qi churned wildly. Qin Wentian's entire body was charred black. If it weren't for the fact that his physique was extremely strong, he would have already been charred by the lightning. This was the power of lightning, too terrifying. Not only that, his opponent's strongest attack had yet to land. His opponent's spear contained a terrifying lightning dragon, and if it landed on Qin Wentian's body, the destructive force would be enough to tear Qin Wentian into pieces. The divine energy within Qin Wentian's body erupted forth as he blasted out with the dragon imprint. Instantly, the roar of a dragon echoed out as the force of nothingness blasted out, colliding with his opponent's lightning dragon spear as a terrifying shockwave blasted into the skies. Both of them were at the 7th level of Yuanfu. Qin Wentian had an absolute advantage in terms of strength, but his mandate was only at the initial level of the 2nd level, while the Violet Armored Warriors was at the advanced level of the 2nd level. A raging wind gusted by. Qin Wentian's silhouette was akin to a gust of wind as he directly pressed forward. His palms were so powerful that they could topple mountains and overturn seas. Demonic qi towered up into the skies, blocking the opponent's spear. Die! Qin Wentian's speed was incomparably fast. At the same level, the Violet Armored Warrior's speed couldn't compare to his. A pair of fearsome wings sprouted out from his back as he stared at the lightning dragon spear. The Violet Armored Warrior slashed out with his palm, akin to a bolt of lightning slashing through the air. This time around, how could Qin Wentian retreat when he was so close to him? His strength instantly erupted forth, colliding head-on with the palm imprint of his opponent. Peng! The Violet Armored Warrior's arm was directly shattered into pieces. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he blasted his palm imprint onto his opponent's body. The Violet Armored Warrior had fallen. A violet-colored battle robe appeared on Qin Wentian's body. Violet battle robes, other than Chen Wang and Shirpadian, this is the most resplendent battle robe. Astonishment, shock. 7th level of Yuanfu, what level of mandate did Qin Wentian's mandate reach? They couldn't tell because Qin Wentian's mandate was in the aspect of force. Without directly clashing with Qin Wentian, there was no way to tell. But no matter what, Qin Wentian had already donned the violet-colored battle robe. Although his cultivation base was at the 7th level of Yuanfu and his opponents were also at the 7th level of Yuanfu, this also proved that he was able to suppress opponents at the same level as him. Most probably, there wasn't a single 7th level Yuanfu cultivator who was as strong as him. At the 7th level of Yuanfu, Qin Wentian was only weaker than the two violet golden-robed warriors. Next, Qin Wentian challenged the two violet golden-robed warriors. When the two of them appeared, the gazes of the spectators landed on Qin Wentian. Could he still win this battle? If Qin Wentian won, he would be the same as Chen Wang and Shirpatian, donning the incomparably dazzling violet gold battle robe. However, it was impossible. After all, this time around, he was facing two violet golden-robed warriors. How terrifying would the combined might of their attacks be? Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with a heavy expression. He still wanted to win this battle. As long as he won, it would prove that he wasn't any weaker compared to Chen Wang and Shirpatian. Only then would he have the opportunity to challenge the two of them after his cultivation base rose to the next level. Even if he wasn't as strong as Chen Wang and Shirpatian, he still had to become the third ranker. If not, he wouldn't even be able to enter the top 3. This was his bottom line. However, his gaze was fixed on Chen Wang and Shirpatian. Hence, for the next battle, he could only win. Chapter 360. The two warriors were clad in violet gold armor, with long spears in their hands, exuding an intense sense of imposingness. Qin Wentian's countenance grew heavy. This time around, he didn't know what kind of mandates these two warriors had comprehended. He could only hope that their mandates weren't too monstrous. Although it was very difficult to categorize mandates, for example, mandates of wind, fire, thunder, great earth, etc., it was impossible to say which mandate was stronger. The crux of the matter was still how high the comprehension of the stellar martial cultivator was. For the same mandate, if different people comprehended it, the difference in the first level wouldn't be too great. This was because the foundation of all mandates was the same. But for the second level, it was different. Not only that, there were some people who had comprehended extremely rare mandates. For example, the mandate of space. Although one couldn't say for sure that it would be stronger than the mandates of fire or great earth, it did have its advantages. For the same person, if their comprehension of the mandate of space and the mandate of fire were similar, they might be able to unleash the power of their mandate of space in combat. But even so, you still couldn't say that the mandate of space was stronger than the mandate of fire. What if it was a different person? For some people who comprehended the mandate of fire, they could comprehend the second level of searing heart, able to incinerate the hearts of their opponents. Ordinary mandates of space wouldn't be able to achieve such might. The crux of the matter was still the comprehension of the person. Qin Wentian's second level of mandate of force was already not bad. The void shockwave he comprehended was able to kill through the void. If he were to attack in close combat, the might of his attacks would be even more terrifying. His attacks could directly impact the internal organs of his opponents. Hence, as long as those armored warriors came into contact with him, they would all be destroyed. The sound of the wind gusted by as the two warriors moved. One of them controlled the mandate of wind. And at the same time, a heavy pressure bore down on Qin Wentian. This was the power of the mandate of great earth. How fast? Qin Wentian suddenly saw a shadow. His body retreated, but the shadow descended in an instant. The long spear pierced through the air. The speed was so fast that people's eyes couldn't follow it. Qin Wentian hurriedly raised his hand to resist. The long spear pierced the demonic body, and a cracking sound rang out. The terrifying spear tip spun wildly, chasing after Qin Wentian, who was knocked back, as if it wanted to completely break his defense and send the long spear into his body. The other violet golden armored warrior also descended. The spear in his hand was incomparably heavy. Even before the spear arrived, Qin Wentian already felt as though his body was about to be torn apart. If he was struck by that spear, he didn't know what would happen to him. It's over. Upon seeing this scene, many in the crowd silently mused. The purple golden armored warrior controlled the mandate of wind. His body followed closely behind Qin Wentian, and his long spear continued pressing down. The platform wasn't large, and it only needed an instant for Qin Wentian to be blasted out of the platform, ending the battle. And indeed, in an instant, Qin Wentian had already arrived at the edge of the platform. Many in the crowd sighed in their hearts. It was a pity that Qin Wentian had to stop at the violet gold battle robes. Only Chen Wang and Shirpatian were qualified to wear the violet gold battle robes. Finally, Qin Wentian's silhouette vanished from the platform. Something's not right. The crowd suddenly discovered that Qin Wentian's silhouette was nowhere to be seen. He's over there, how could he be so fast? The crowd saw the silhouette of Qin Wentian appearing beside the purple golden armored warrior that was proficient in the Mandate of Wind. Success. Qin Wentian silently mused. Back then in the unmatched realm, he was able to mimic the abilities of demonic beasts and cultivated the 81 demonic innate techniques, as well as many innate techniques that he had learned from imitating demonic beasts. One of them, Rock Flash, was a technique that mimicked the terrifying speed of a golden-winged rock. It was able to cause one's silhouette to disappear in an instant. Before this, although Qin Wentian had cultivated this technique, he was still lacking in maturity. Now that he was forced to the edge of the platform, he chose to unleash the Rock Flash instead. The violet golden armored warrior sensed that something was wrong. He abruptly turned around. Although his speed was extremely fast, how could he make it in time? Under Qin Wentian's attack, the violet golden armored warrior wasn't able to withstand it. After destroying this violet golden armored warrior, Qin Wentian stomped heavily on the ground, moving towards another violet golden armored warrior that was proficient in the Mandate of Earth. His body was like a demon, and his gaze was terrifying. This was an illusory armor that had no heart. If not, he would be able to use the heartbreak chime to attack. Now, it was a battle of strength. Qin Wentian collided with the violet golden armored warrior, causing a deafening sound to echo out. The terrifying shockwaves churned violently, and Qin Wentian felt as though his arms were about to shatter. Groaning in agony, Qin Wentian coughed out a mouthful of blood. His opponent's second-level Mandate of Earth was similar to his Void Shockwave, a type of vibrational attack that caused him to feel as though his body was about to be torn apart. However, the defense of the violet golden armored warrior wasn't as strong as Qin Wentian's demonic physique. He was illusory, and the 7th level of Yuanfu was based on Wuxiu, who was at the peak of the 7th level of Yuanfu. Hence, Qin Wentian's attack destroyed him. A violet gold light flashed, enveloping Qin Wentian's body. He was like a violet gold war god, exuding a fearsome might. Violet gold battle robe. The gazes of the spectators froze. Qin Wentian was clad in a violet gold battle robe. Such a level of combat prowess was already extremely terrifying. Even someone with a second-level mandate, at the advanced boundary, was crushed by Qin Wentian. Not only that, there were two of them. Maybe there's a second-level mandate hidden in his attacks as well. Someone in the crowd speculated as they stared at Qin Wentian. Chen Wang and Shirpatian also saw this scene. This was the third person to be clad in a violet gold battle robe. However, this person was only at the 7th level of Yuanfu, and his battle robe was as dazzling as the rest of them. Many of the spectators frowned in disdain. For example, Zhang Chen and the rest. Although Qin Wentian's combat prowess was high, he was participating in the Heavenly Fate rankings, and his opponents wouldn't suppress their cultivation bases to fight against him. Qin Wentian could only be considered lucky. On the platform, a total of 3 warriors clad in platinum-colored battle robes appeared. The platinum-colored battle robes exuded a sense of nobility and majesty, as though it was the armor of an emperor. Both Chen Wang and Shirpatian failed to equip it. And now, Qin Wentian was the third person to challenge the platinum-colored battle robes. 3. This time around, would Qin Wentian still be able to win? In the air, Old Man Tianji and the rest also turned their gazes onto Qin Wentian. Their countenances were calm, with no fluctuations in the slightest. Those from the Hua clan, Pil Emperor Hall, and Ouyang aristocrat clan all noticed this. Luo He glanced at Imo Qingcheng. She didn't use her full strength, and only wore a simple yellow battle robe. Maybe to Mo Qingcheng, her purpose in participating in the Heavenly Fate rankings wasn't to obtain a high ranking, but rather, for him. Master, junior sister Qingcheng concocted the limit break pellet, Bai Fei, who stood behind Luo He, cautiously reported. I know. Luo He replied in a cold tone, as though she was unhappy. Limit break pellets were concocted by Mo Qingcheng using her blood, sweat, and tears, all for Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's cultivation base was the same as the last time they met, but Luo He knew that as long as he consumed the limit break pellet, Qin Wentian's cultivation base would leap up to the 8th level of Yuanfu. Right now, with his cultivation base at the 7th level of Yuanfu, he was already invincible against those at the same cultivation level. In that case, the 8th level of Yuanfu shouldn't be too far off. Not only that, he should be able to contend against the vast majority of 9th level Yuanfu cultivators. However, it was impossible for Mo Qingcheng to allow him to defeat Zhang Chen. Luo He had heard her master mention Zhang Chen's current strength before, and she knew that it wasn't as simple as it seemed. It had been a very long time since the Pill Emperor Hall had produced such a shocking character on the Heavenly Fate rankings. Previously, although Zhang Chen was ranked number 11, he wasn't even in the top 10. This wasn't something to be proud of. For the ranking battle this time around, the Pill Emperor Hall needed Zhang Chen to be able to advance. On the platform, the 3 platinum-ranked warriors around Qin Wentian had already made their moves. A terrifying vortex manifested around Qin Wentian, wanting to devour him whole. There was no hope for him in this battle. The 3 platinum-ranked warriors attacked at the same time, trapping Qin Wentian in the middle. A terrifying golden light enveloped the entire area. The 3 platinum-ranked warriors had all comprehended the mandate of metal, and under their combined attacks, Qin Wentian had no way to escape to the heavens, no way to the earth. Danger, such an attack, are they trying to kill Qin Wentian? That platinum-ranked warrior, at this moment, the spectators all had astonished expressions on their faces. Qin Wentian, would he be the first to die on the platform? Qin Wentian was someone who had made it all the way to the platinum-ranked warrior stage, yet he had no way to counter such an attack. This. Qin Wentian's countenance changed, but he had no time to hesitate. His eyes flashed with a terrifying sharpness, and with a single point of his finger, a terrifying vortex of demonic chi appeared, transforming into boundless might that slammed into one of the platinum-ranked warriors, instantly annihilating it. At the same time, a fearsome ancient shield materialized around his body, enveloping him completely. Kaboom! How terrifying was the attack power of the long spear! Even though the ancient shield was condensed from divine energy and was glowing with the light of divine inscriptions, it was still forcefully broken apart. However, the attack of the platinum-armored warrior was also slowed down. Qin Wentian grabbed out with his palm, his golden dragon claw explosively lashed out, directly landing on the head of one of the platinum-ranked warriors. Qin Wentian didn't care about his life at all. As expected, his attack caused the spear of the strongest platinum-ranked warrior to pierce into his body. Fresh blood flowed out, and his body seemed to solidify into a golden color. However, Qin Wentian's eyes were still as cold as ever. His palms slashed out, and the platinum-ranked warrior was directly cleaved into 2. At this moment, countless gazes froze on the spot. That finger technique and the strength of that claw, as well as the ability to exchange injuries for attacks, was simply too insane. Qin Wentian broke through, and not only that, he only used an instant. An illusory platinum-ranked battle robe appeared on Qin Wentian's body, causing the spectators to forget about his injuries and his coughing. They also didn't know how much divine energy Qin Wentian had expended in that instant of attack. They only saw that he was clad in a platinum-ranked battle robe. Even Chen Wang and Shirpatian couldn't do it. Chapter 361. The platinum battle robes on Qin Wentian's body shimmered, and on the platform, there were no more warriors. This indicated that Qin Wentian had already reached the pinnacle of the same level. Other than him, there was no one else who could match the platinum battle robes. Sadly, he was born at the wrong time. What a pity. Many in the crowd silently mused. If only Qin Wentian had another year or two, his cultivation base would have already stepped into the 8th or 9th level of Yuanfu. At that time, his will of mandates would be even more powerful, and at that time, he would be able to contend against Chen Wang and Sherpatian for the most dazzling position in the heavenly fate rankings. And as for now, although he had donned the platinum battle robes and performed exceptionally well, the disparity between him and Chen Wang was still insurmountable. Regardless of cultivation base, mandates, or innate techniques, he would definitely be suppressed. There was no way for him to compete against Chen Wang. Maybe he could be the same as Chen Wang and endure for 3 more years. In the ranking battle 3 years from now, he would have a chance to become one of the top 3 rankers. Qin Wentian walked up the platform. The blood on his chest seemed to have been frozen by the mandate of gold. Earlier, the attacks from the 3 warriors had caught him off guard. Qin Wentian sat cross-legged, silently recuperating at the side. A medicinal pill flew over, and Qin Wentian didn't even need to think, he directly swallowed it. Such a scene caused many to have bewildered expressions on their faces as they cast deep glances at Imo Qingcheng. That medicinal pill had been flicked out by Imo Qingcheng. She had actually given it to Qin Wentian? Could it be that after seeing Qin Wentian donning the platinum battle robes, she had developed feelings for Qin Wentian? However, this didn't seem realistic. Mo Qingcheng didn't even accept Hua Taishu's advances. She might have only helped Qin Wentian because she saw that he was injured. However, Qin Wentian didn't stand on ceremony at all. After swallowing the medicinal pill, he didn't even say a word of thanks as he continued to recuperate. As for the other participants, they all continued to challenge the heavenly fate rankings. The number of people who didn't have a chance to obtain the yellow-colored battle robe grew more and more as they left in dejection. However, there was one person who attracted the attention of the crowd. Because this person's countenance was extremely unfamiliar, many didn't know who he was, and he wasn't a ranker on the heavenly fate rankings. With a cultivation base at the 9th level of Yuanfu, one could very well imagine how powerful Qin Wentian's combat prowess was. For a period of time, Qin Wentian's limelight directly surpassed that of Qin Wentian. After all, Qin Wentian's cultivation base was at the 7th level of Yuanfu. This was the ranking battle of the heavenly fate rankings, and although one's combat prowess at the same level would cause others to sigh in admiration, this ranking battle still depended on who was the strongest. After this person obtained the violet gold battle robes, his name was Si Qiong. No one had ever heard of this person. They didn't even know his background. Apart from that, when this round of battles ended, quite a few powerful figures had emerged. They hadn't revealed themselves before, but now that they had all erupted with power, it caused everyone to have a whole new level of respect for them. In the end, the one who put on the platinum robe was Qin Wentian. There were a total of 3 who had donned the violet gold battle robes, Chen Wang, Sherpatian, and Si Qiong. Other than that, there were a total of 5 who had donned the violet gold battle robes, Yan Cheng, Leng Hong, Qin Zheng, Yao Jun, and Hua Shaoqing. These 5 people were extremely unexpected, but Yan Cheng and Yao Jun weren't too shocking. After all, the Swallow Swordsman, Yan Cheng, was originally ranked number 8 on the Heavenly Fate rankings, while Yao Jun from the Sky Demon sect was ranked number 13. The Heavenly Fate rankings were as common as the clouds, so it wasn't surprising for a few of them to erupt with power. However, Leng Hong, Qin Zheng, and Hua Shaoqing were truly shocking. Leng Hong was somewhat similar to Si Qiong, nobody knew his background. Occasionally, 1 or 2 people would say that Leng Hong was a wanderer who roamed Grand Xia. Qin Zheng was a stranger in Grand Xia, but for those who cultivated in the unmatched realm, they would definitely have heard of him. And finally, Hua Shaoqing, he was actually someone from the Hua clan. Initially, the spectators thought that after Hua Taishu, the next pillar of the Hua clan would be Hua Feng, but who would have thought that Hua Shaoqing would appear instead? This caused many to smell an unusual aura. The younger generation of the Hua clan was filled with geniuses, and they had always been hiding Hua Shaoqing. Unknowingly, Hua Shaoqing had already become so powerful. The ambitions of the Hua clan weren't small at all. The battles of Si Qiong, Leng Hong, Qin Zheng, and Hua Shaoqing were all witnessed by the spectators. These four might very well be the dark horses of the heavenly fate rankings this time around. For this round of battles, the elimination rate was exceedingly high. Only less than 1,000 remained, but those who remained were even more terrifying. To be able to defeat the three yellow-robed warriors, one of their mandates must be at the perfection boundary. Not only that, the majority of participants were all at the 9th level of Yuanfu. For them to be able to wear the yellow robes, other than having a mandate at the perfection boundary, they had to be at the peak of the 9th level of Yuanfu. For the heavenly fate rankings, the elites of Yuanfu and Grand Xia were all gathered here. For this round of battles, the majority of them fought with all their might. Naturally, there were also some who had different personalities. They chose to conceal some of their strength, hoping to catch their opponents off guard and surprise them in the later rounds. The crowd on both sides of the path continued on their way, entering the depths of the Grand Xia Empire. The ranking battle had been held many times already, they naturally understood the rules. The next round would only be even more intense. Not only that, the ranking of the heavenly fate rankings would also be temporarily determined. All 360 spots would be allocated. The next round of battles would be the true prelude to determining the final rankings of the heavenly fate rankings. The next round would begin, the fight for the ancient luck of Grand Xia. In the hallway, old man Tianji stared ahead, staring at the crowd. After which, his gaze landed on Qin Wendian as he spoke, "The one clad in the platinum battle robes shall be the first to pass through the ancient gate. The ancient gate contains the ancient luck of Grand Xia. All of you shall be able to seize the ancient luck of your opponents, and when only 360 people possess the ancient luck, that shall be the end of this round. At that time, you shall be ranked accordingly." Qin Wendian's gaze turned towards the end of the battle platforms. Over there was an ancient gate. Standing up, Qin Wendian slowly walked forward. "Wait a minute," at this moment, a low voice drifted over, causing Qin Wendian to halt his steps. Turning his head, Qin Wendian's gaze landed on the person who spoke. It was none other than Chen Wang. "You are not suitable to be the first to enter," Chen Wang calmly stated, his eyes staring ahead. He didn't even bother to look at Qin Wendian. He initially thought that no one would be able to surpass him in the violet gold battle robes. However, Qin Wendian had actually donned the platinum battle robe, snatching away the opportunity for him to be the first to enter the ancient gate. "What do you mean?" Qin Wendian frowned as he faintly inquired. Chen Wang still didn't look at Qin Wendian. Instead, he turned his gaze in the direction of old man Tianji as he spoke. "Senior, according to the rules, the order of entry can be determined according to the number of battle robes one possesses. But as long as he chooses to give up, he can do so. Am I right?" "Yes," old man Tianji replied, "but only if he is willing to give up." Those from the great Solar Chen clan all had smiles on their faces. Chen Wang wanted to be the first to enter the ancient gate, the first person to receive ancient luck. The spectators all had expressions of interest on their faces when they saw this scene. Those who knew the rules of the heavenly fate rankings all understood why Chen Wang wanted to be the first to enter. Because he had the strength to do so, he wanted to obtain the recognition of ancient luck. As for Qin Wendian, although he had donned the platinum battle robe, his cultivation base was still too low. The order of entry wouldn't change the final result, but Chen Wang still wanted to be the first. Firstly, the meaning behind it was different. "You will give up on your own, right?" Chen Wang's gaze finally landed on Qin Wendian as he calmly asked. Qin Wendian similarly stared at him, he didn't say anything. Inside, there's a ceiling formation. When seizing ancient luck, you can also take the life of the person who possesses it. Chen Wang continued, the meaning of his words were already clear. Chen Wang wanted to be the first to enter, he was threatening Qin Wendian. "You are the violet gold battle robe." At this moment, Qin Wendian finally spoke, his words causing Chen Wang to frown. What was the meaning of his words? "As for me, I am the platinum battle robe. Qin Wendian continued. After which, he turned and continued walking forward. Instantly, a cold light flickered in Chen Wang's eyes as killing intent flickered within. Qin Wendian persisted, he wanted to be the first to enter. The violet gold battle robe user, second. Old man Tianji glanced at the crowd as he spoke again. However, Chen Wang and the rest were exceptionally calm. As long as they weren't the first to enter, what was the point? Especially to Chen Wang. Qin Wendian pushed open the door and stepped inside. A bright light flashed as he appeared on the peak of an ancient mountain. This scene caused a look of astonishment to appear on his face. Was this a spatial formation? He saw spatial energy again. In the air, a terrifying pressure bore down, causing Qin Wendian's body to stiffen. He didn't even have the time to survey his surroundings before he inclined his head and stared up at the sky. In the next instant, Qin Wendian's gaze froze. In the air, there seemed to be a screen of light that enveloped the entire sky. Within that screen of light, fire-colored chi flowed as an incomparably majestic demonic beast hovered in the air, staring down at the world below. On top of its golden wings, a crimson glow could be seen circulating with a dark luster, exuding a sense of majesty. This demonic beast had 9 tails, and its body was incomparably huge. The entire array was pressed under its body, as if it was the soul of the array. Its eyes were incomparably sharp, as though they could penetrate through people. And right now, those eyes were staring right at Qin Wendian, causing Qin Wendian to feel a sense of suffocation. Divine bird, vermilion bird. The totem beast of the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. Once upon a time, the citizens of Grand Xia all worshipped the vermilion bird as their divine spirit, their totem. But now, thousands of years had passed. Grand Xia was no longer the Grand Xia of the past, and the rumors about the vermilion bird grew fewer and fewer. Yet the vermilion bird in the air seemed to have a life of its own. It was currently staring at Qin Wendian. The first person to enter actually only has a cultivation base at the 7th level of Yuanfu, yet he's clad in a platinum-colored battle robe. A cold and dignified voice drifted over, causing Qin Wendian to feel an even more intense feeling of imposingness. I shall bestow upon you the ancient luck of purgatory. The vermilion bird spoke again. After which, it opened its beak and spat out a beam of light towards Qin Wendian. Instantly, an illusory vermilion bird appeared behind Qin Wendian. It was none other than the purgatory vermilion bird. Chapter 362. Qin Wendian inclined his head and stared at the gigantic vermilion bird in the air as his heart trembled. Ancient luck. It was rumored that the purpose of the ranking battle of the Heavenly Fate rankings was to seize ancient luck, to contend for heavenly fate. At this moment, the purgatory vermilion bird appeared behind him. It wasn't large in size, yet it exuded a baleful aura. Its body was a mix of crimson and black, giving off a stifling feeling. The eyes of the purgatory vermilion bird drifted in the air. Only now did Qin Wendian start to survey his surroundings. The place he was in was actually a mountain range, and in the distance, there was a boundless spatial zone. Through the use of spatial energy, he had actually stepped into a formation world. This formation world was ancient and filled with the vicissitudes of time. There was a very high possibility that this was something left behind by an ancient dynasty. It was unknown how terrifying one's strength must be in order to enter a formation world. The purgatory vermilion bird let out a low-sounding screech, as though it wasn't an illusory body, but an actual existence. Qin Wendian's terrifying perception gushed forth, and at the same time, his silhouette flickered, wanting to see what kind of space he was in exactly. However, not long after, he abruptly turned his head, staring in the direction of a mountain rampart as a sharp light flickered in his eyes. Over there. Qin Wendian instantly turned and flew in that direction. An instant later, he stood in front of a mountain rampart as a terrifying might gushed forth from it. On the rampart of the mountain, a terrifying gigantic axe could be seen. It was unknown how many years this axe had been here for. It was extremely ancient, yet there weren't any traces of rust on it. The most terrifying thing was the might exuding from the axe, causing people to feel fear in their hearts. What a powerful divine weapon! Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered, his palms instantly grasped onto the hilt of the axe as he violently tried to pull it out. However, he discovered that the axe didn't budge in the slightest. No matter how much strength he exerted, the axe was still quietly stuck in the ground. What kind of place is this? Qin Wentian was shocked in his heart. Just by standing here, he could feel the terrifying will of the axe. It was as if the axe light could split him in half at any time. Qin Wentian retreated, and the wings of a great rock appeared behind him. His body suddenly changed direction, and like a great rock, he flashed away, leaving this place. He wanted to see what kind of world this was. Not too long after, Qin Wentian stood in the middle of a vast ocean. The place he was standing on was a gigantic reef, and in front of him, there was a terrifying coldness emanating from it. There seemed to be a whirlpool there that led to the depths of the ocean. However, Qin Wentian didn't take the risk. He was a cautious person, and if he didn't have the slightest confidence, he wouldn't do such a reckless thing. However, he faintly understood why there were some people who had already reached the Heavenly Dipper realm when their mandates had already reached the Heavenly Dipper realm. Although there weren't many people like this, only those ranked at the top of the Heavenly Fate rankings, it was enough to make Qin Wentian feel that the Heavenly Fate rankings had something they wanted to pursue. Inclining his head, Qin Wentian stared at the skies. The gigantic vermilion bird was still there, as though it was the ruler of this world. On the shore, a silhouette could be seen slowly walking forward. This silhouette was a middle-aged man clad in a windbreaker. He was extremely old, yet he still hadn't broken through to Heavenly Dipper. This could only mean that his talent wasn't high, but it didn't mean that his strength was weak in the Yuanfu realm. This person was also a ranker on the Heavenly Fate rankings, and was ranked within the top 100. Behind him, the shadow of a vermilion bird could be seen hovering. However, this vermilion bird was different from the one behind Qin Wentian. It was an ordinary vermilion bird, unlike Qin Wentian's purgatory vermilion bird. The battle shadow of this person was a yellow-colored battle robe. This person slowly walked forward, glancing in the direction of Qin Wentian before continuing forward. Over there, Qin Wentian saw a familiar silhouette, Li Shiyu from the Unmatched Realm. Li Shiyu's talent could be considered outstanding in the Mystic Maiden Palace. Not only that, she had already broken through to the 9th level of Yuanfu, and was also qualified to enter the formation. The speed of the middle-aged man abruptly increased. Li Shiyu furrowed her brows as she abruptly turned and fled. The two of them chased after each other at an extremely fast speed. However, the middle-aged man still managed to catch up to Li Shiyu. The middle-aged man directly launched an attack against her as both of their astral souls erupted forth. The astral soul released by the middle-aged man was actually a blood-colored silhouette that exuded an evil aura. The mandate he was proficient in was actually at the perfection boundary of the mandate of blood. Other than that, his mandate of wind and mandate of metal were both at the perfection boundary. Although Li Shiyu was equally powerful, she soon found herself unable to endure any longer. She coughed out blood, dyeing her robes red. Qin Wentian merely watched on calmly. Although they were both cultivators from the Unmatched Realm, the two of them didn't have much of a relationship. Back then, Li Shiyu even wanted to separate Fan Lu and Xian Xian. Naturally, Qin Wentian had no reason to help her. At the end of the battle, Li Shiyu was defeated. Qin Wentian discovered that the vermilion bird behind the middle-aged man had actually devoured the shadow of the vermilion bird behind Li Shiyu. This caused the aura of the vermilion bird behind the middle-aged man to grow stronger by several degrees. Li Shiyu's silhouette abruptly vanished from sight as she was teleported out of the formation, causing Qin Wentian to sigh in amazement. Is this what it means to seize ancient luck? Qin Wentian's heart trembled. So it turned out that the battle for ancient luck was so cruel. Whoever was defeated would have their ancient luck seized away, and be kicked out of the Heavenly Fate rankings. After the middle-aged man defeated Li Shiyu, he turned his head and glanced at Qin Wentian, hesitating for a moment. After which, it was as though he had made a decision. His silhouette flickered as he floated towards Qin Wentian. The middle-aged man floated in the air, staring at Qin Wentian as he coldly stated, "Although you're extraordinary, your cultivation base is too weak. Why don't you give me the ancient luck of the purgatory vermilion bird?" Qin Wentian turned his gaze onto the middle-aged man, only to see that on the forehead of the middle-aged man's vermilion bird, there were 2 dots of light. This indicated that the 2 vermilion birds had fused together. As the sound of his voice faded, the vermilion bird above his head flew towards the purgatory vermilion bird hovering above Qin Wentian as it let out a shrill cry. The purgatory vermilion bird similarly let out a shrill cry, causing the middle-aged man to furrow his brows. "If you don't make it submit, I can only act personally and make you suffer a little before seizing your ancient luck." A cold light flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. Momentarily, the might of his vermilion bird grew even stronger, clashing head-on with the middle-aged man's vermilion bird. Their minds are actually linked. Qin Wentian finally understood how the middle-aged man had managed to devour Li Shiyu's ancient luck. "What's the use of gathering the ancient luck of the vermilion bird?" Qin Wentian asked. Hasn't anyone told you before? Gathering ancient luck, condensing the true body of the vermilion bird, and opening the ancient ruins of Grand Xia. But your strength is so weak, so what if you know? An overwhelming pressure gushed forth from the middle-aged man as an evil astral soul floated above him, resembling a pair of crimson eyes. This caused the blood in Qin Wentian's body to seethe in agitation. Qin Wentian laughed. Although this middle-aged man appeared to be looking down on him, he was actually extremely cautious. He intentionally used words to probe Qin Wentian, but he didn't dare to directly make a move. He wanted to probe Qin Wentian's strength. This middle-aged man was rather old, yet he had yet to comprehend a second-level mandate. It wasn't that he didn't want to break through to Heavenly Dipper, but rather, it was impossible for him to do so. He had been stuck at the Heavenly Fate rankings for so many years, and had been surpassed by countless others. Seeing those people breaking through to Heavenly Dipper, he naturally didn't feel good. But he would come here every 3 years to search for an opportunity. Being able to survive each time was naturally due to his cautious nature. "The power of my bloodline isn't something you can shake. Since you want to seize my ancient luck, hand it over." Qin Wentian soared up into the air, dashing towards the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man frowned as he turned and fled. Qin Wentian laughed as he chased after him. Bzzz. Abruptly, the middle-aged man spun and lunged towards Qin Wentian. His mandate of blood erupted forth as he grabbed out with his palms, wanting to tear out Qin Wentian's flesh and blood. His speed was so fast that no one could evade it. This middle-aged man hadn't comprehended a second-level mandate yet, so how could Qin Wentian fear him? He lifted his palms and punched out. At the instant the two of them collided, Qin Wentian only felt the blood in his body churning madly, as though it was about to explode. The blood-red glow on his arms flared up, but the middle-aged man didn't have it any better. He clashed with Qin Wentian at close range, and the mandate of nothingness directly penetrated into the middle-aged man's body. "You." The middle-aged man stared at Qin Wentian. This was a second-level mandate. Pang. Qin Wentian's palms continued pressing forward as an even more terrifying shockwave gushed forth. The purgatory vermilion bird howled in agony as it spat out a mouthful of blood. The purgatory vermilion bird shrieked as it swallowed the purgatory vermilion bird. An instant later, the middle-aged man was swept out of the formation world. The vermilion bird hovering above Qin Wentian had 3 dots of light on its forehead. Its aura has grown stronger, and its illusory body seems to have become more corporeal. Qin Wentian was somewhat bewildered. Plundering ancient luck was truly cruel. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered, and on his way, he encountered 6 to 7 people. Without any mishaps, all of their ancient luck was plundered by him. The vermilion bird hovering above Qin Wentian actually had a corporeal body, and a vertical beam of light could be seen in the center of its brows, exuding an even more terrifying baleful aura. The aura emanating from it was actually at the first level of Yuanfu. In the external world of the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia, the gazes of the spectators were all focused on the formation world in the center. The world of the formation world was incomparably clear, but in their eyes, it was so small that they could see what was happening within. Chen Wang and Shirpatian are so crazy, there's already 2 vertical beams of light. Si Qiong as well, and Zhan Chen as well. These few people are the most frenzied when it comes to plundering ancient luck. For every dot of light that appeared in the center of their brows, it meant that one person had been eliminated. For every vertical beam of light, it meant that 10 people had been eliminated. With Qin Wentian's strength, he can actually defeat those rankers on the heavenly fate rankings. Seems like his mandates have already reached the 2nd level. Only those with 2nd level mandates at the 9th level of Yuanfu would be able to suppress him. Look at that damned fatty, isn't he too shameless? He's actually hiding under a rock by the sea, cultivating. Someone glanced at the silhouette of a fatty. That damned fatty was simply shameless to the extreme. He wanted to hide and cultivate until the end, yet he still managed to preserve his ancient luck and successfully enter the heavenly fate rankings. One couldn't help but to say that such a method was simply too shameless. Chen Wang and Shirpatian have encountered each other, but they didn't clash head-on. Evidently, they want to save their battle for the very last moment. That direction, that's Qin Wentian's direction. Qin Wentian is going to encounter Chen Wang, he's going to be in for it. At this moment, the spectators discovered that in that space, Qin Wentian and Chen Wang were currently facing each other. However, since they were in the world of the formation world, they didn't know that the other party was approaching. Earlier, Qin Wentian had offended Chen Wang. This time around, he would definitely be in for it. Chapter 363. The Vermilion Bird Formation Array was a supreme formation that had existed since the time of the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. It was incomparably ancient, and even after the 9 grand clans had betrayed the ancient kingdom, they still had no way to take control of the Vermilion Bird Formation Array. This formation was something they couldn't break. Only those at the Yuanfu realm could enter. Hence, out of the 18 training grounds of Grand Xia, the Vermilion Bird Training Grounds of Ancient Xia was ranked number 1 for Yuanfu cultivators. Even after thousands of years, these transcendent powers still hadn't given up on the Vermilion Bird Formation. Every time the Heavenly Fate rankings were held, they would send their strongest experts over to see if they could uncover the secrets of the Vermilion Bird Formation. In the thousands of years after the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia was destroyed, there were also a few outstanding geniuses who managed to obtain great benefits from the Vermilion Bird Formation. It was rumored that the Azure Emperor obtained an extremely powerful cultivation art from the Vermilion Bird Formation, but no one knew exactly what it was. Qin Wentian naturally didn't know the history of the Vermilion Bird Formation. He only felt that this formation was extraordinary, to think that it could even give birth to a vermilion bird spirit. Based on his current strength, he had no way to see through this formation. He only knew that this formation was extremely vast, and after 3 days, he only met 10 or so people. He also saw many ancient ruins, some of which had already been excavated by others. Naturally, he wouldn't be able to get a share of them. There were also some ancient ruins that he couldn't touch, such as the gigantic axe embedded into the stone walls. In fact, Qin Wentian could just stay at a certain location and spend some time inscribing a 4th-ranked divine inscription formation. That way, no one would be able to do anything to him. But this formation was simply too vast, and the only way to do so was to go out and plunder the ancient ruins. His powerful perception continued extending outwards in all directions. Not long after, a silhouette appeared in his perception, causing him to halt his steps. Chen Wang. Chen Wang of the Great Solar Chen clan had come here for the sake of obtaining the top ranker on the Heavenly Fate rankings. He was originally ranked second, behind Hua Taishu, and now Hua Taishu was already attempting to break through to the second level of Heavenly Dipper while Chen Wang was still in Yuanfu. But one could very well imagine how much of an advantage Chen Wang would have when he was in Yuanfu. His mandate had already broken through to the second level of Heavenly Dipper, and his mandate of flames was already at the advanced boundary of the second level. It was still unknown if this was Chen Wang's limit. But one thing was for sure. In the ranking battle for the Heavenly Fate rankings, no one dared to antagonize Chen Wang. Qin Wentian calmly turned around and walked back the way he came, causing the crowd to freeze. Qin Wentian and Chen Wang were about to meet, but he actually turned around first. Was it a coincidence, or was Qin Wentian's perception stronger than Chen Wang's? He already knew where the king of Qin was. And indeed, Chen Wang didn't discover Qin Wentian's presence. He continued moving forward at his original speed, neither hurried nor slow. The battle that everyone thought was about to erupt didn't happen. Chen Wang changed his direction, his silhouette flickered as he increased his speed. He knew how vast this space was, and he had to increase his speed when plundering ancient luck. Under the bewildered gazes of the crowd, Qin Wentian didn't leave. Instead, he actually followed after Chen Wang. This caused the crowd to sigh in admiration at how audacious this young man was. Or maybe it was because of his overwhelming confidence in his perception, he actually dared to follow after Chen Wang. It's Qin Zheng, that dark horse. His surname is the same as Qin Wentian's, and he's about to meet with Chen Wang. The spectators outside could see everything clearly. The ones they paid the most attention to were Chen Wang, Shi Patian, Wang Zhu, and the others. And now, the dark horses Si Qiong, Qin Zheng, and Hua Shaoqing were also starting to attract the attention of the crowd. And as expected, Chen Wang and Qin Zheng met. Evidently, Chen Wang had plundered more ancient luck than Qin Zheng. His luck was also extraordinary, it was a golden-feathered vermilion bird, while Qin Zheng's was an ordinary vermilion bird. Do you want to hand over the ancient luck yourself, or do you want me to act personally? Chen Wang stared at the shadow of the vermilion bird above Qin Zheng. There were 5 dots of light on Qin Zheng's forehead, and as long as he plundered them, it would be equivalent to plundering ancient luck 5 times. Chen Wang. Qin Zheng casually laughed. You won't be able to obtain my ancient luck. A cold smile appeared on Chen Wang's face. With a cold snort, he stepped out. His arms were bright red, like they were made of fire. The temperature in the air rose as a terrifying heat filled the air. It was as if all the moisture in the air near Chen Wang had evaporated. Seems like you don't believe me. Qin Zheng laughed. Chen Wang coldly snorted as an incomparably tyrannical fist light blasted through the air. A terrifying flaming fist light swept through the air, filled with a terrifying berserk intent. Not only that, its speed was also extremely fast. Boom! The terrifying fiery fist slammed into Qin Zheng's body. However, the spectators discovered that Qin Zheng's silhouette had already appeared at the side. In that instant earlier, he had changed his position, and his speed was incomparably fast. Chen Wang slowly stepped out, his palms grabbing out in the air as a terrifying fiery palm imprint directly slammed into Qin Zheng's body. Such an innate technique caused the spectators to be filled with awe. Break! Qin Zheng spat out a single word as the fiery palm imprint shattered. At the same time, Chen Wang's silhouette appeared, the light of the great sun radiating from him was incomparably resplendent. Each and every one of the beams of light from the great sun could blind the eyes of the spectators. Qin Zheng closed his eyes, and when Qin Zheng's great sun sword slashed down, his silhouette vanished once more. In an instant, he reappeared in front of Chen Wang. His palms slashed out. Qin Zheng's palms were akin to the edge of a blade, exuding a terrifying slicing energy. Chen Wang's left hand smashed out, his entire arm glowing red as he directly blocked the slicing energy. The terrifying temperature caused Qin Zheng's palms to turn red as well. Break! Qin Zheng coldly snorted. His palms slashed out as his sleeves were set ablaze, charring his entire arm. Chen Wang's red-hot arm seemed to have been burned off, and when his arm returned to normal, his sleeves had already been burnt to a crisp. Traces of blood could be seen on his arm. Mandate of space. Chen Wang mumbled, staring at the wound on his arm. With such a mandate, no wonder he is so confident. Inclining his head, Chen Wang's eyes were like the blazing sun. The flames around him towered up into the skies, and as the sun appeared, the entire space around him seemed to be boiling. His silhouette flickered as he lunged towards his opponent, akin to a blazing sun. Everywhere he passed by, everything would be scorched into ashes. Incinerate. Chen Wang coldly snorted. The light from the great sun gushed forth towards Qin Zheng. Qin Zheng's 2 wheels of mandates gushed forth from his body. After which, his palms slashed out in the air as an incomparably resplendent great slicer sword slashed down from the skies, cleaving apart the great sun, transforming it into boundless flames that continued gushing towards Qin Zheng. However, given how fast Qin Zheng's speed was, he instantly vanished from sight, retreating far away. Spatial laceration, infused with the mandate of wind, resulting in the might of the great slicing sword. Chen Wang stared at Qin Zheng as he asked, "Who are you?" Qin Zheng of the Unmatched Realm. Your mandate bestowed upon you an extremely powerful ability to evade, but do you think you still have a chance in a decisive battle? Chen Wang stared at Qin Zheng. His combat prowess was obviously higher than Qin Zheng's, but his control over the mandate of space and mandate of wind was extremely high, and his ability to evade was also exceedingly high. Chen Wang, don't think that you're unrivaled in this ranking battle. Let's not talk about a decisive battle first. Even if you don't know that you're being followed, you're still talking about a decisive battle? Qin Zheng laughed. Chen Wang's eyes flashed, abruptly, his perception expanded outwards. Qin Wentian silently cursed, this Qin Zheng was too dishonest. His silhouette flickered as he instantly fled. Chen Wang sensed something, his countenance abruptly changed. His silhouette was like the wind, as he chased after Qin Wentian with the speed of lightning. Evidently, he had sensed the fluctuations of Qin Wentian's aura. Based on strength alone, Qin Wentian didn't believe that he would be able to contend against Chen Wang. Qin Wentian. Chen Wang grinned malevolently. He was at the peak of the 9th level of Yuanfu, and although Qin Wentian cultivated a movement technique, so did Chen Wang. In terms of speed, Chen Wang was clearly faster than Qin Wentian. After all, there was a huge disparity in their cultivation bases. You won't be able to escape. Chen Wang could already see Qin Wentian's silhouette. The distance between the two of them shortened, and the great solar radiance radiating from Chen Wang was extremely terrifying. After which, Chen Wang flicked his finger as a few great solar swords slashed downwards. Qin Wentian turned and blasted out a dragon imprint. However, the great solar swords were incomparably resplendent, directly shattering the dragon imprint. The aftershock of the great solar swords slammed into Qin Wentian's body. Qin Wentian's countenance was as cold as ice, he continued advancing forward. The wings of the great rock behind him flapped rapidly as a cave dwelling appeared in front of him. The interior of the cave was extremely dark, and with a flicker of his silhouette, he dashed inside. Courting death. Seeing this, Chen Wang laughed coldly. He didn't slow down at all as his body was bathed in flames. The great solar universe energy was able to incinerate everything in its path. Descending into the cave, Chen Wang strode forward. The instant he stepped into the cave, a terrifying pressure gushed over him, causing his long hair and robes to flutter violently. Chen Wang's countenance turned cold as he blasted out a beam of great solar light from his palms. Boom! His heart seemed to tremble slightly, contracting violently. Following which, an even more terrifying attack destroyed the scorching sun, destroying everything and piercing towards his heart. Chen Wang roared in rage, the blood and bones in his body all transformed into lava. A gigantic wave of flames erupted at the entrance of the cave, causing it to tremble violently. Chen Wang's body was forcefully flung out of the cave. His right arm trembled as drops of blood flowed out from it, as though they were about to drip down. A surge of scorching flames gushed forth, evaporating the blood. Chen Wang steadied his palm as his countenance turned ashen. In the battle against Qin Zheng, he couldn't do anything to him. But now, he actually suffered a loss in the hands of Qin Wentian. But how could Qin Wentian unleash such a terrifying attack? A beam of great solar light slashed down. Chen Wang wanted to destroy the cave dwelling, but he discovered that although the cave was trembling, it didn't show any signs of collapsing. Chen Wang's countenance stiffened as he walked to the entrance of the cave. A terrifying wave of scorching flames gushed into the cave, engulfing it completely. He stood outside as he coldly stated, "So you can only hide inside like a turtle?" Chen Wang, when you fought for the heavenly fate rankings, I was still at the low level of Yuanfu. Now that you can't do anything to me, you still dare to spout such arrogant words? A cold laughter rang out, containing a hint of mockery in it. If you have the guts, come on in. Chen Wang's countenance was as cold as ice as he heard the sounds of explosions echoing out from within the cave. Chapter 364. The cave that Qin Wentian was in was dimly lit, and the walls of the cave were incomparably sturdy. Qin Wentian had to expend a great deal of energy to inscribe the divine inscriptions. Earlier, at the instant he stepped into the cave, Qin Wentian had already congregated all the energy in his body. His bloodline limit, divine energy, piercing heart bell, and heaven-breaking finger all blasted out at the same time, causing Chen Wang to suffer a disadvantage. Not only that, Chen Wang didn't dare to step into the cave. Qin Wentian's cultivation base was at the 7th level of Yuanfu. In addition to his fiend transformation art and divine energy, his cultivation base was comparable to those at the pinnacle of Yuanfu. Not only that, he had also comprehended a mandate of mandate and innate techniques. Against those at the pinnacle of Yuanfu, as long as they hadn't comprehended a 2nd-level mandate, it wouldn't be difficult for him to kill them. But Chen Wang was different. His cultivation base was already at the pinnacle of Yuanfu. Not only that, he also cultivated the Great Solar Universe art and had the Great Solar bloodline. In addition to the fact that his 2nd-level mandate was already at the advanced boundary, he could even fight against those who had just stepped into Heavenly Dipper. His cultivation base couldn't be measured by Yuanfu. When fighting against him, Qin Wentian's cultivation base was too low, he had no advantage at all. At this moment, the flames unceasingly gushed into the cave. However, Qin Wentian's feet glowed with a brilliant light as an ancient shield appeared in front of him, blocking the corrosive flames. Abruptly, a sharp sword pierced through the shield, shattering it into pieces. Qin Wentian's countenance was ice-cold as he blasted out a palm strike, shattering the great solar sword. His hands didn't stop moving as he continued inscribing divine inscriptions. Chen Wang, you think too highly of yourself. I'm only at the 7th level of Yuanfu, yet you can't do anything to me. What if one day I break through to the 8th level? And what if I break through to the 9th level? How will you fight against me then? Qin Wentian coldly spoke. At that time, I can easily kill a heaven's chosen of the great solar Qin clan. Let me ask you, are you not ashamed to call yourself a heaven's chosen? Chen Wang stood outside the cave with a frown on his face. His eyes flashed with a cold light as he stared into the cave. He could sense that Qin Wentian was inscribing divine inscriptions. That mocking voice was definitely Qin Wentian intentionally trying to provoke him into entering the cave. At this moment, Chen Wang stopped his attacks and closed his eyes. He knew that everything that happened in here could be seen clearly by those outside. He had failed in his pursuit of Qin Wentian, and most probably, countless people were watching. Those from the great solar Qin clan, as well as those from the 36 transcendent powers, were all staring at him. Hua Taishu's name had long been spread throughout Grand Xia. As for Chen Wang, the people of the world would only remember him as the number 1, not the number 2. Just like what Qin Wentian had said, if he couldn't even deal with someone at the 7th level of Yuanfu, how could he, Chen Wang, be the chosen of Grand Xia. The king of Chen was extremely determined. Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. Chen Wang took a step forward. His body turned into a flaming giant in the magma, and his meridians and bones seemed to have turned into a demonic fiery red color. His eyes shone with the light of the great sun as the great solar universe energy erupted forth. The bloodline of the great solar bloodline circulated within his body, incomparably resplendent, causing the spectators outside to be stunned. Chen Wang was still Chen Wang after all. He was the one with the highest chance of obtaining the top position in the heavenly fate rankings. He stepped out and entered the cave. The spectators outside couldn't see what was going on inside, they didn't know what was inside. Why was Chen Wang so cautious? The flames on Chen Wang's body lit up the cave, and when he saw Qin Wendian inside, a terrifying heat instantly rose up within the cave. Scorch marks appeared on the surface of the ground, as though the earth itself was being scorched. I will kill you first, then devour your ancient luck. Chen Wang's voice was cold, incomparably domineering. Qin Wendian only felt a terrifying heat radiating from his body, as though his entire being was about to combust. Only to see Chen Wang placing one of his palms on the stone walls of the cavern. Instantly, a surge of heat radiated outwards, causing the entire cavern to turn red. Chen Wang wanted to make Qin Wendian regret his actions. Do you feel despair? Chen Wang placed his palms on the stone walls as he advanced forward step by step. Qin Wendian coldly stared at him. The infuriated Chen Wang was even more terrifying than before. The current Chen Wang was truly one of the strongest contenders for the top position in the heavenly fate rankings. Die! Qin Wendian's voice was ice cold. A terrifying storm of sword qi gushed forth, engulfing the entire cave in an instant. That storm of sword qi swept towards Chen Wang, sealing off all possible escape routes. So this is how you want to deal with me? Chen Wang dashed forwards, not retreating, but advancing instead. With a flick of his palm, the great solar sword slashed apart everything as it slashed towards Qin Wendian. Go! Qin Wendian pointed his finger as a terrifying vortex of sword qi gushed forth, wanting to devour Chen Wang's body. Qi, qi! An ear-piercing whistling sound rang out. Qin Wendian only saw the tempest of swords revolving madly, emitting a piercing sound. Two flaming palms materialized and abruptly pulled at the sides. The sword qi whirlpool vanished as Chen Wang, who had transformed into a flaming man, appeared. Above his head floated the flaming giant astral soul from the fifth heavenly layer. Qin Wendian waved his palms as countless sharp swords slashed out. Chen Wang wanted to fuse as one with his astral soul, becoming the flame giant astral soul. This is already the power of an astral nova. Chen Wang is already preparing to step into the Heavenly Dipper realm. In fact, he might already be a half-step Heavenly Dipper sovereign. Qin Wendian stared at Chen Wang as an even stronger storm of sword qi gushed forth. Chen Wang stomped the ground, grabbing out with his palms towards Qin Wendian. If that flaming palm landed on Qin Wendian, it was sufficient to incinerate Qin Wendian into nothingness. Chen Wang's attack power had already stepped into the Heavenly Dipper sovereign realm. Even the fourth-ranked storm of sword qi Qin Wendian couldn't kill Chen Wang. Despair. Chen Wang blasted out with his palms, dissipating the sword qi. He was like a divinity as he walked towards Qin Wendian. In the center of Qin Wendian's brows, a third eye abruptly opened. In an instant, a resplendent light flashed as a terrifying will-of-will gushed into Chen Wang's sea of consciousness. At the same time, Qin Wendian frenziedly blasted out with both his palms, summoning a gigantic ancient bell. Boom, boom, boom. The chimes of the bells rang out unceasingly, echoing throughout the entire cavern. Chen Wang's head swelled with pain as his heart pounded madly, as though it was about to explode. Yet, his palms still continued to blast towards Qin Wendian. Cover. With an intention of his will, Qin Wendian's entire body was enveloped by towering sword qi, burying him within. Only his eyes remained exposed, and they were as cold as ever. He dashed out, no longer holding back on his divine energy. The chimes of the bells continued, the heaven-breaking finger, capable of breaking the heavens with a single finger. Qin Wentian's palms weren't only covered in demon armor, there were also swords as well. Boundless sword chi gathered in the air, converging towards the tip of his finger. With this finger, the swords all turned blood-colored. Countless blood-colored swords converged into a vortex, gushing towards Chen Wang. Qin Wentian's finger pressed downwards. A destructive tempest manifested, wanting to destroy the entire cavern. Cracks appeared on Chen Wang's flaming body as the slaughter divine inscriptions once again gushed towards him. With a howl of rage, Chen Wang dashed out of the cavern, while Qin Wentian's body slammed heavily into the stone walls of the cavern. The bones in his entire body felt as though they were about to shatter. The swords and demon armor on his body were all shattered, and the yuan energy within his demon sovereign Yuanfu and heavenly hammer Yuanfu was completely depleted. His last Yuanfu only had half of its astral energy left, and was no longer able to support him in battle. Coughing out a mouthful of fresh blood, Qin Wentian sat there, feeling as though his entire body was about to shatter. He was in excruciating pain, yet his eyes remained fixed on the outside, incomparably cold. Chen Wang, who had rushed out of the cavern, returned to his original state. He was no longer in the form of a flaming body, and was clad in a robe. However, this robe of his was instantly dyed red with fresh blood. The spectators outside were all stunned by the scene before them. Chen Wang had entered the cavern, and after exiting, he was actually so heavily injured. What exactly happened in the cavern? The smiles on the faces of those from the great Solar Qin clan vanished. Chen Wang was in such a miserable state. How could this be? Qin Wentian, he's a fourth-ranked divine inscriptionist. Luo he indifferently stated, her words causing the countenances of those from the great Solar Qin clan to stiffen. That arrogant 7th-level Yuanfu cultivator was actually a 4th-ranked divine inscriptionist. No wonder Chen Wang suffered such a huge disadvantage. The spectators only saw Chen Wang's rage towering to the heavens. He soared up into the air as he howled in rage. Outside the cavern, a voice resounded throughout the heavens and earth. Qin Wentian, if you don't die, how can I rest in peace? I, Chen Wang, am willing to protect all of you from danger. As long as there's someone who is willing to protect this cavern for me, Qin Wentian shall kill that person. Chen Wang's voice reverberated through the air, spreading out in all directions. Not long after, someone actually appeared. This person was none other than the 18th ranker on the Heavenly Fate ranking, Yang Fan from the Star-Seizing Manor. He had always wanted to kill Qin Wentian, and when he heard Chen Wang's words, he immediately rushed over. Yang Fan stared at Chen Wang in the air. Chen Wang actually suffered such a huge disadvantage at the hands of Qin Wentian, no wonder he was enraged. Qin Wentian is proficient in divine inscriptions, I need to force him out. Now that he's injured, the moment he comes out, he'll die. Chen Wang stared at Yang Fan as he spoke, you guard this place for me, I'll go look for his friends. Yang Fan knew that Chen Wang was truly enraged when he saw the flames of rage burning around him. He couldn't help but to nod his head as he replied, I'll guard this place. I'll continue to summon more people here. Even if I can't obtain first place in this round, I want him to die. Chen Wang's voice was cold to the extreme. Stepping out, his silhouette vanished in an instant. The words of Chen Wang were heard by Qin Wentian. His countenance flickered with a cold light. He, Ouyang Guangsheng, Chu Mang, Fan Lu and the rest all came to participate in the ranking battle. Everyone knew that Chen Wang wanted to use them to force him out of the cavern. Qin Wentian leaned against the stone wall. Beside him were many yuan meteor stones, which he used to replenish his astral energy. At this moment, with an intention of his will, a medicinal pellet appeared in his hands as a cold light flickered in his eyes. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.